I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Land acknowledgement. I'll call on Councillor Sentence to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations of the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor Sentence. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, are there any changes to the order of the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to move the agenda? Mover, Councillor Decker, seconder, Councillor Dividitis. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Adoption of the minutes. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes? Mover, Councillor Sentence, seconder, Councillor D'Angelo. Are there any errors or omissions? These are the minutes from Tuesday, December 6th. CL 25-2022. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Mayor's report. On December 8th, I attended the Niagara Health Foundation Celebration of Lights campaign tree lighting ceremony held at regional headquarters in International Park. This campaign funds urgently needed equipment that is essential for the treatment, diagnosis, and recovery of patients and residents across Niagara. Regional Chair Bradley was also in attendance. On December 8th, I also attended the annual Christmas social hosted by the Niagara Board of Trade and Commerce and the Thorold BIA, as well as Venture Niagara. This event was held in the upstairs hall at the Canadian Corps on Claremont Street. Councillor Sentence and Councillor O'Hare, CAO Manoj Dalwaria, and Economic Development Manager Ken Schultens were also in attendance. On Friday, December 9th, CAO Manoj Dalwaria and I had an introductory meeting with the new president of Brock University, Dr. Leslie Riggs. We look forward to future meetings with President Riggs as we continue to work on community-related issues and partnership opportunities. The Great Holiday Food Drive bus made its stop at the Pine Plaza in front of Foodland on Friday, December 9th from 2 to 2:45 p.m. Councillor O'Hare and I were there to welcome the bus and offer any assistance they required. Maxine Hutchings, branch manager from the Thorold location of Community Care St. Catharines Thorold, was also in attendance. Once again, our community stepped up and were very generous with both food and monetary donations. Thank you to Todd Marr, your staff, and all the volunteers for going above and beyond to make this important event a huge success. On Saturday, December 10th, I attended the Knights of Columbus Sacred Heart Council 2319 Thorold 100th Anniversary Dinner at Club Belvedere. Councillors D'Angela and Councillor DeRose, as well as Regional Councillor Whalen, were also in attendance. We presented them with a certificate of recognition on reaching this important milestone. On Monday, December 19th, I attended the 128th Thorold Flying Dragons Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron annual mess dinner held at the Trinity United Church Hall. Councillor DeRose and I presented them with a certificate of recognition honoring their 80th anniversary, April 29th, 1942 to April 29th, 2022. Thank you, Commanding Officer Captain Parker, for the invitation, and to the 128th Thorold Flying Dragon Squadron for their outstanding community service. Also on December 19th, I attended and spoke at the BMI BioVald Group and Hope Port's announcement on the purchase of the former Hayes-Dana property. This purchase by the BMI Group adds more than an additional 170 acres to the Thorold Multimodal Hub, an innovative hub which is reactivating former industrial brownfield properties. Councillor O'Hare, Councillor Sentence, and Councillor Dividitis were also in attendance. Applications for all committees of council and boards of management for the 2022-2026 council term are now open until January 8th, 2023. Thorold residents can apply for appointment using the online electronic application form or by picking up a hard copy application form at City Hall, the Thorold Public Library, or the Thorold Community Arena. For more information, please visit the City of Thorold website at thorold.ca. On behalf of City Council, I would like to recognize and thank City staff, Thorold Fire and Emergency Services, QP membership, and councilors for their contributions to this year's Christmas programs. Together, over $1,300 was raised for the Adopt an Angel program, as well as excellent support for the Toolbox Niagara campaign and the Community Care Food Drive. A special thank you to the Port Robinson Community Center and their volunteers for hosting the annual food drive with Santa and his helpers, collecting non-perishable food items for Community Care St. Catharines Thorold. Over 1,300 pounds of food were collected, as well as clothing for Jack's Sharing the Warmth clothing drive. It was a cold, wet day, but that didn't dampen the enthusiasm or generosity of the residents of Port Robinson. Councillor O'Hare attended and volunteered at this important event. Between December 27th and January 6th, the City of Thorold will be offering a variety of skating programs to enjoy the winter school break. Free hot chocolate will be available during all public skates. For more information about the holiday schedule and fees, please visit thorold.ca/arenas. Please be advised that the City of Thorold municipal offices will be closed from Monday, December 26, 2022 through Monday, January 2nd, 2023 for the holidays. Regular hours will resume on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. As we wrap up 2022 and head towards 2023, we can do so with optimism, knowing that brighter days lie ahead. On behalf of City Council and staff, season's greetings, Merry Christmas, and a happy, healthy New Year. Over the holiday season, please take some time to enjoy with family and friends. And that's the end of my mayor's remarks. And now we'll move on to statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. I'll call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended, respecting zoning bylaw amendment for 41 St. David's Road West. Up first, city staff presentation. I'll call on Nick Bogart for the presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Nick, are you there?
I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Excellent. I believe the clerk may have our presentation up. If not, I can share my screen too.
You have the ability to share your screen if you'd like.
Great. There we go. How's that?
You're good to go.
Excellent. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and members of public at council or tuning in online afterwards. My name is Nick Bogart. I'm with MHBC Planning, and we're providing temporary planning services to the city. I'm here tonight to speak to the zoning bylaw application to construct a fourplex on the subject lands. So the subject property is located on the south side of St. David Street West. It's between Queen Street and West Street, both north. The subject lands have an area of about 0.11 hectares, which is about 0.28 acres, about 25 meters of frontage along St. David's, and the property currently contains a single detached dwelling. The proposal that the applicant has applied for is to facilitate the redevelopment of the subject lands with a fourplex as well as associated parking and landscaping facilities. And supporting studies have been submitted with the application, including functional servicing, planning justification report, and proposed site plan. The application was submitted by Upper Canada Consultants on behalf of 1834583 Ontario, which is Markin Homes and Construction. It's a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment, as I mentioned, to permit a fourplex, and then with the associated landscaping and parking. And amendments are required to both the existing bylaw, 1987, and as well as the new bylaw. Public notice for the application was provided as per the Planning Act requirements. No objections have been received from the internal divisions or external agencies. One community comment was received to date, and that was asking questions about potential damage to fencing and if the builder is required to repair any of the possible damage that could occur. This chart here just has a bit of a summary of the department and agency comments. Generally, I'd characterize them as either no comments, no concerns, and there is a request from engineering for site servicing and a grading plan for review. So the purpose of the meeting this evening is to receive comments on the application, and then once all the agency and public comments have been received, a recommendation report will be prepared and presented at a future council meeting. And I believe the applicant is here this evening as well. So that was it for my presentation. I can take any questions from council now, or we can do that after the applicant has presented as well. Thank you.
I'll open the floor to questions from council. Are there any questions for Nick? Seeing none, thank you, Dick. Nick, I'll move on to our applicant presentation.
Thank you very much.
I'll call on William Hycoop, planner, Upper Canada Consultants, for his presentation. William, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for having me this evening. I'm just going to share my screen here and get the brief presentation going. As you know, my name is William Hycoop. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants and am representing the owners of this application, Markin Homes and Construction. I'll just try and keep things brief. Nick kind of gave a good overview, but the subject property is at 41 St. David Street West. Here you can see it is located in an existing residential area that contains a variety of different architectural styles, built forms, with various different lot sizes and types. As Nick indicated, there's a large frontage of over 25 meters and a deep depth of about 46 meters. And the area of the property is 1,126 meters squared. So generally this is an oversized property by today's standard and is a good candidate for infilling and intensification. So the application is for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit a fourplex dwelling, and it seeks to establish permissions both under the old existing bylaw in force and effect and the new bylaw. There is two minor adjustments under the old bylaw for lot frontage and minimum landscape open area. However, under the new bylaw, there is one different site-specific provision requested, and that is to reduce the minimum landscape buffer abutting an R1C zone from 1.5 to 1.25. That's consistent with the side wall or interior side yard setback requirement. Here you can see the proposed site plan. Due to the depth of the property, the building is sited more or less in the middle of the property to balance the configuration and allow for adequate parking space in the driveways. There are two double-car driveways similar to the two existing driveways, and they are connected by a walkway that leads to a common doorway in the middle. The floorplex dwelling is essentially two duplexes that are pushed together, ultimately resulting 2 units on the ground floor with a garage and 2 units on the second floor. The 2 units on the second floor also have a rear stairway that will allow access to a generous shared rear yard amenity area measuring over 16 meters in depth. The elevations, the proposed plans have been designed in a manner to resemble a more traditional built form and architectural style, comparable to a semi-detached dwelling. Glazing is proposed on the garage doors as well as a masonry stone skirt, which will result in an aesthetically appealing appearance. So in conclusion, the proposed zone amendment will permit for a fourplex dwelling and make better use of an underutilized and oversized property within the urban area. The proposal will add more dwelling units and provide more housing options within this existing residential area. So with that concludes my presentation, and I'm certainly here to answer any questions you, council, or the public may have on this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William. I'll open the floor for questions to William. Are there any questions for the presenter? I'll start with Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Haiku, just a couple of questions, if I may. First off, I want to applaud your approach to intensification. I know that we need that severely in our housing situation. My first question is concerning the garages. So is each garage going to be shared by each unit? There's 4 units, I understand, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. However, the garage would just be for the units on the ground floor. So each unit has an entry through the main middle door, but the garages have a separate entry. So the reason why we've set this up that way and have the 2 driveways is essentially so that each unit is not dependent on another unit's parking. So basically with the double driveway, 2 double driveways, you have 4 aisles, 1 for each unit. So let's say, someone parks on the left side of the driveway, someone parks on the right side, and there's enough space to move around and you're not blocking someone in. So we've done that strategically to make sure we're not in a conflict with the parking spaces.
Thank you. And a second question, I just would like to ask about the side yard setbacks, which from what I understand, you're asking for a variance because they're less than should be granted on a lot like this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we're not asking for a reduction on the side yard. The 1.25 meter side yard setback that we're proposing complies with the existing zoning. What we're asking for is to reduce the landscape area. So we're asking for a reduction of the landscape area for 1 foot of space. And so in order to accommodate proper grading and drainage, we have to run a side yard swale along both sides of the house. In discussion with the engineers here at Upper Canada, we feel that the 1.2 meters or 1.25 is enough to accommodate that side yard swale, which would be grassed. So the situation from a grassed landscape perspective isn't changing. And so we're in compliance with that side yard setback and are able to ensure the grassed swale functions properly and can convey the stormwater as needed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hare. Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following the lines of the parking, you mentioned that it's a double driveway, there'll be 2 laneways. How many parking spots are going to be available?
So between the back of curb, the existing road line, and where the garage is, so each unit would have an aisle which would accommodate 2 parking spaces in the driveway, and then the 2 bottom units would be able to accommodate an additional spot or 2 in the garage, depending on how full the garage is, obviously.
Okay, so that's, you're looking at 2, 4, 10 spots then?
Potentially. I'm not saying that they would all necessarily be used all the time. It really depends on the usage and who's moving in there. Currently, the front wall is set back 10 meters from the front lot line. So technically that is one parking stall depth for each unit. But practically and physically speaking, off the traveled asphalt roadway of St. David's Road, you'd be able to squeeze an extra space, but it doesn't count for a legal parking stall.
Okay. I'm just trying to get clarity on that, because one of the concerns I always have with these proposals is today you show us a nice plan here, and then tomorrow the whole front lawn is paved. Are you going to give us any guarantee that no additional parking spots will be paved over to accommodate vehicles?
Well, the existing zoning bylaw only permits a certain width of the front yard to be paved at 50%. So we're coming in below that. So if anyone was to come in and try and pave over the top of the front middle area, if you will, they wouldn't be permitted to do that under the zoning bylaw. When we started this process with staff, we actually were trying to have a small little turnaround area so that you could pull in sideways. And staff were very explicit with us that they didn't want the front yard to become a parking area. And so we purposefully changed the plan in discussions with the owner and the builder to make sure that we had green space in the front.
Okay, so you're basically guaranteeing that the front will not be paved over completely then? You'll follow the bylaws that are in place?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Any further questions, Councillor D'Angelo?
No, that was my main one, because you just have to go around the corner and you can see many examples of what that's been done. And the residents are very concerned about parking, specifically on St. David's. It's a very narrow road. There's no parking. Then the side streets have parking only on one side. So where are these additional cars going to go? That's the big question that people have. I know it meets our zoning, but allowing just the one parking spot. And then similar to a garage, by the time garages are full, there's no parking left there. So I discount those as parking spots. The only other question I had, and I don't know if I probably should have asked during the staff presentation, is that area of St. David's and that area there prone to any sewer backups because of sewer flow, stormwater sewer flow? I don't know if it's an appropriate time to ask that question, or I could wait till the staff report comes, but I'm...
Sure.
So I can chime in if you're okay with that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so as part of the application, we were required to complete what's called a functional servicing report. So our engineering staff undertook an investigation of the existing sewer capacity and services along St. David's Road. And we feel comfortable with that report. We've submitted it to staff for their review. I haven't heard any comments or concerns with that report. Secondly, they're just really looking for a lot grading plan as part of the detailed building permit process, should this be approved.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sean.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that area of town is not an area that we currently have under investigation for any type of systematic sewer backing up.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for you to, William, how many bedrooms, I didn't catch if that was mentioned, how many bedrooms are these units expected to hold? My question is because we've seen similar buildings built in Thorold that have 22 bathrooms and 18 bedrooms. Is this what we're looking at here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. So we'd be looking at 2-bedroom units here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone
No
else?
further questions, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, William, for the presentation. Just a quick question. William, in conversing with the builders, can you ensure or have them ensure somehow before this is approved? You talked about swales. There's been other intensification in town where, and it's not as big a building as this, where builder left and the neighbors have flooding issues. So can we get something from them before council makes a decision on this? Just to
sorry to interrupt
just
you,
to
but
ensure
through you, Mr. Mayor. So we've actually put together a lot grading plan already to make sure things can work. So I can provide that to staff for their review. And the objective of this is more of a rental one. So the owners, the builders aren't planning on going anywhere soon on this. So we want to make sure that it's done properly and there's no long-term drainage issues.
Yeah, thank you. Just we want to make sure there's proper runoff. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Go ahead, Councillor Divinitis.
I kind of like this project. It's some affordable housing that we all need out there. So I'm really supporting this one.
Thank you. Councillor O'Hare, did you have another question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Haiku, last question, I forgot I wanted to ask this one as well, but sometimes the drawings that we receive are very difficult to read just because of the way they're formatted on our digital screens. So the roof looks incredibly large, and I'm assuming that the height of the building is within the requirements of the bylaws for home height, roof height lines. You can confirm that for me?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. We're meeting the required height. Yeah, so we have a typical 6-12 pitch, which is a 1-to-2 sloped ratio, which is fairly common on most dwellings of this nature. Having dealt in this industry for a while, the drawings, when you look at a roof, you're looking at it flat, but in real, you're looking at it and it's angled. So just my 2 cents are that when you look at a roof on a drawing and it's flat, it always looks bigger than it appears in real life.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, William, for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on this application? Is there anyone that is online? At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on this application? Do we have anyone online? One more time. Is there anyone online that wishes to speak on this application? There's no one. Okay.
Good evening. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can. Can you state your name and address, please?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Vijay Bhaskar. I'm the owner of the address 35 St. David Street West. It is very close by to this location, please.
Yeah.
And my concern is, once these things are going to start, what is going to be the effect on the other properties? Like, for example, I know these dense, dwellings. What kind of effect is going to be on the other, in the neighborhood? If somebody has the knowledge and can specify on that, please, I would appreciate that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's going to? Either Nick or William, who wants to speak on this?
I can chime in, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like. This is an application that has been submitted to change the zoning bylaw amendment. So if anyone in the immediate surrounding area, say around 35 St. David's West, wanted to make an additional change to their property, they would have to make a similar application to the city council. and you would be able to comment on that at that time. Each application is separately reviewed and considered under the merits of its own application. So this is something that isn't precedent setting in the neighborhood. And unless an application is made, which you would be able to appear at a public meeting such as this, you'd be able to comment if there's an impact to your property or an issue that you would have. So I think that would be my response, and I would open it up to Nick if he has anything else to add.
Nick, are you there still?
I am, yes, thank you. That was well said, William. I was going to say something along those same lines. Just that, yes, every application is submitted and evaluated separately. And one of the things that's always looked at is compatibility with the surrounding uses. So that's certainly one of the considerations that we do look at. And by ensuring we have things like a planning report and appropriate engineering drawings, we can make sure that things are compatible and do go with the neighborhood.
Thank you, Nick.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for the response, please.
Is that good for you, VJ, or are you looking for more? Are you good with that response?
Yes, please. Really appreciate it for both the gentlemen, and really appreciate Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming to council and presenting this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, is there anyone else online who wishes to speak on the application? Okay. Seeing there is no one else, we'll move on to 7.3, and this is the report and correspondence for information only. Do I have a mover and a seconder for report DS3 2022? Please note this report is for information only. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Longo and Councillor Sentence. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, pursuant to Section 34. Council will consider staff's recommendation report immediately following the meeting. The public meeting portion of this application is now closed. Okay, so now this is number 2, correct? Okay, public meeting number 2, statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. I'll call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13 as amended, respecting zoning bylaw amendment for 50 St. David's Road West. Presentations up first. Once again, we have Nick Bogart for the presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Nick, you're up again.
Hello again, everyone. I will just share my screen, Mr. Mayor. I've got another very similar short presentation. Does that show up okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So hello again. Once again, Nick Bogart from MHBC, here presenting about zoning bylaw application for 50 St. David, which is just across the road and over a few houses from the last application. So this property is located on the north side of St. David, and it's near the intersection of West Street North and St. David. The land is a bit smaller than the last one, but this has an area of 0.18 acres, or about 722 square meters. The proposal that the applicant has applied for is to facilitate the development of the property for a semi-detached dwelling unit. It's not permitted by the current zoning. Building elevations and a conceptual site plan were developed by the applicant and were submitted with the application in order to show how the site can function. So I've just got the site plan here showing the two dwelling units, driveway on the side of the property, and then I put a couple of the elevations in here just so you have a sense of what it looks like. So the zoning bylaw application was submitted by Maz Khan for the subject property. It's a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to permit the semi-detached residential dwelling, as I mentioned. And similar to the other application, amendments are required to both the enforced zoning bylaw and then the new zoning bylaw. The application was circulated for comment as per the Planning Act requirements. No objections were received from internal divisions or external agencies, and there were no public comments received to date on the application. And this table here just shows the list of the comments that were received. Generally, there's no concerns. There was comment from planning to retain existing vegetation where feasible, because there's some vegetation along the property line, and then a request from engineering related to site servicing and grading, and then they noted that there was a catch basin also required for the rear yard. And then finally, there was a comment about ensuring the services are split going to the property so that there's one for each semi-detached unit. So similar to the other application, the purpose of the meeting tonight was to receive comments on the application. And then once all the public and agency comments have been received, a recommendation report will be prepared and then presented at a future council meeting. So that was all from my presentation. I'm not sure if the applicant is here as well to present, but I'll just open up to them, and I assume if there's any questions, we'll do those afterwards.
I'll open the floor first to questions to you, Nick, and
okay.
Councillor O'Hara, you're up first.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Bogart. I have a question about this building. It's a new build. I've seen it go up in the past little while. And what I'm curious about is the building permit that it initially had. So I'm assuming that it would have been a single dwelling building permit. Is that correct, as far as I'm assuming?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure on the building permit what that looked like. That would have been before we were involved providing services to the municipality. But perhaps another staff member can assist with that, or I can look into that and come back to council with that afterwards.
I'll see if Jason, can you comment on that, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking it up right now. If we want, we can come back to me in a few moments.
We will. Absolutely. We'll come back to that. Okay. I'll move on to, I think, Councillor Longo, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick questions. Parking seems to be the question of the night, but the previous presenter mentioned that I think it was 50% of the front yard could be used for parking. Does this application fit that specification?
Nick, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it does. I don't have the exact figure offhand. I believe it was around 40% of the front yard was for parking on this one, but it was below the bylaw requirement.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is, it says it's a new shared driveway, because obviously this has, instead of a side-by-side semi, it's a front and back semi. There's parking in the rear yard, so it's a shared driveway. Is that the intent of, I'll ask the question a different way. Should that not be a fire route? And maybe I'll ask the fire chief if, because how can that be a shared driveway if fire vehicles would need to get to a separate unit at the rear of a lot?
Go ahead, Nick.
I can start and then certainly turn it over to fire as applicable. So the intent is, yes, it is a shared driveway, so it provides access to the units at the rear of the property, and that way of travel just leads to the other parking area. And I'm not sure with the setback for fire, it may be long enough to reach the fire hose from the street anyway. In the event that the driveway is blocked, it's typically, I believe, a 30-meter reach that the hose has. That's my understanding at least.
If I could ask that, obviously in the report that comes back to us, that we get an explanation on whether or not that needs to be maintained as a fire route.
Certainly, I can make sure that's in there.
Fire Chief Dixon's back, and do you want to comment on that, or would you like to comment at a later date regarding the laneway to the back unit? Would that be considered a fire route? Is that your question, Councillor Longo?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, what I can do is I can talk to our fire prevention department and make sure that's taken care of, make sure we have that all looked after for the fire route there.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions?
Yes, maybe I do have a question. As Councillor O'Hare mentioned, this is a brand new building, it just went up. Why wasn't this application brought forward before a building permit was issued and construction took place? It seems like the old story, do it and then ask for forgiveness later. I'm not sure why it was done this way. Can I get an explanation?
Jason, can you answer that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure anybody with us today would be able to answer that, as it doesn't appear we have the applicant here with us, and only the applicant would be able to identify the purpose for going about it in this way.
The applicant is here, so when he will be able to ask that question, Councillor Longo, when he comes up. Thank you. Okay, Councillor, do we have an answer for Councillor O'Hare? For his previous question.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It appears that, yes, the building permit was originally issued as a detached house, a single detached house.
Single detached, okay. Thank you. Are there any, go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following up with the parking, I see when I look at, I don't know how accurate this diagram is in terms of size-wise, but I know the front, you mentioned that it meets the minimum requirement of the 50% lot coverage, that there's availability. Is that similar in the back also? To unit dwelling number 2, when you have the 2 cars back there, it looks like there's a lot of pavement back there. When I look at this picture, it looks like very little grass. It says landscape area. Does that still meet the requirement of, you mentioned it was 50% of it had to be a green space?
Nick, go ahead for that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor. So the regulation that we talked about was related to the amount of the front yard frontage that can be a driveway, and that's where the 50% comes in. And then, sorry, road's acting up. There's also a requirement for landscaped open space, and that's taken over the entire lot. So it takes into account the front and side yards and also the rear yard. And that requirement is met. There's actually a surplus of landscaped open area on this property.
To you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just follow up with that. What's the percentage? Because when I look at this, again, I'm just looking at a design. It looks like there's a lot of pavement and very little grass, but that's still... so someone could pave their whole backyard, and then as long as they have 50% in the front, they meet the qualification?
Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you. It would be related to the amount taken over the whole yard. So it's kind of like if you built a big patio, that's kind of taken as also an impervious space. So it's kind of treated the same way if you had a driveway in your yard as well. And as long as you still met the overall landscape requirement, then my understanding is that would still meet the zoning bylaw requirement. And I can double check on the amount of open space they've got here. Just don't have that at my fingertips, but... Yeah,
again, when the report comes back, I'm more than willing to wait till the answer comes back with the report, because like I said, I'm very curious because I see a lot of pavement there and very little grass, but you know, when it comes back later, that's fine. Also, when I look on Google Maps, and I also did a site visit out there, there is actually a bus stop in front of this property. Obviously, the driveway is going to cause some issue with the concrete bus stop. Whose responsibility will it be to move the bus stop and pay for that cost? And where will it end up?
What's that? That's probably a question for engineering. Would that be you, Sean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, usually in a situation where someone's changing our infrastructure, sorry, they would be expected to change it as part of their construction. I don't know that we've looked at it at this point in time as to where it's going to end up, but they will certainly be the ones changing.
Okay, if that could be maybe included in the report where this bus stop is going to be ending up, neighbors should have a right to know if it's going to end up in their front lawn. So if that could be added.
Well, we'll take due note of that.
Yeah,
and,
that's all I'm asking for.
Get a
Mr. Mayor.
response. Thank you. Is that everything?
Well, and then just the cost to make sure it's borne by the developer to move it and put it somewhere else, because it is a concrete pad and they're not cheap these days. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Hanley. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know who I should ask this, but just that Councillor Hare bringing up and about the building permit and then us being told that it was actually a building permit was issued for a single detached dwelling, and now he's built a duplex. My question, I don't know, through you, maybe to Jason. Jason, wouldn't the building department, after having a footing inspection, foundation inspection, and framing inspection, see that what was initially given permission for wasn't actually what was there, and a stop work permit would be issued until such was met? Would we allow someone, if they applied for a single detached building permit, to build a duplex and then worry about it later? Is that what we would normally do?
Go ahead.
And when the city issued a single detached building permit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanley. The answer would be no. We would issue orders if the construction was not in conformance with the approved plans for the building permit. I'm not familiar with what's on site at the moment, but all that was approved was a single detached dwelling. Oftentimes, some contractors may construct a building to look similar to a semi-detached or something similar to that with the hopes of converting it in the future. But if it's only being used as a single detached dwelling at the time, then we don't really have anything that would allow us to prevent that from happening. However, we do keep a close eye on it, and should it begin to be used for something that it was not permitted for, then we would take the necessary action.
Okay, because they're proposing tonight, if I could, Mr. Mayor, just follow, okay, because they are proposing a duplex today, and it's my understanding that a single detached permit was issued, so why are we allowing it? I don't even believe it should be at this process myself. It should have ceased until they met the conditions. Am I wrong?
Go ahead, Jason.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Handley. So should this application go through and the zoning be approved, this isn't giving them the final approval to actually do the construction. They will still require further permits to convert this building legally into the proposed duplex. So they will need additional building permits for all that construction.
Okay, thank you very much. No more further questions.
Thank you. Well, who does? Good. Okay. Any further questions? Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you. Just following Councillor Hanley's line of questioning in terms of building permit. I don't need an answer right now, but maybe in the report, if you could come back and let us know what has been approved from a building standpoint at this point in time. Like, I'm not sure exactly what's done in the interior, because I'm sure their fire code regulations are different for a single detached home as opposed to a semi that usually has to have a fire retardant wall in between the two. So I'm not sure where that stands. And so maybe just in the report have an update of where it is in the current process so we have a good understanding.
Thank you. It's duly noted. Okay, are there any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to move on now to the applicant presentation. The applicant's here? And the name?
Maz Khan.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, sir, I'm here.
Please provide your name and address,
Sure.
and then you can go ahead.
My name is Maz. This is my home, and I'm the one behind it. And if you guys have questions, I'm willing to answer that.
Okay, are you providing a presentation, or are you just going to answer questions?
No, I think the gentleman did a very good job there. I can address, I have written down their concerns and I can address them if you like.
Yes? Okay, we'll open the floor to questions then, Mellis.
Okay.
Are there questions that council would like to ask at this time? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khan, for joining us. Just a couple quick questions. You're the builder of the structure?
I am the homeowner. I am basically, this is my first rodeo. I am not experienced in this process at all. I have basically tried to work with my neighbors to try to understand, to give you a little bit of context as to how this came about. Yes, it was a single home. Basically, my brother wanted to move in with me. So, or if you look at the inside the home, there's nothing aside from the outside. There's nothing on the inside, right? So, my original plan was just to have a single dwelling there, but because my brother wanted to move in with me, and we spoke to city council as well as my team that drafted the designs, and I was wondering, this was obviously in hindsight, this is, before COVID and all that. So we were trying to see if we could have it in a way that, tomorrow he moves out, then, at least, I can do something with the other half, or someone else could live in there. So that was my intent. It's obviously, you could see it's my first time here. I wasn't exactly sure, but the design was sort of like that. And yes, I guess it seems like, it's one of those things where, it may look like, our intent was different, but this was originally, I have been holding this home for almost 2.5 years now. And I tried to work on it with any money I have. So my goal is not to, make this complicated. It was basically, we followed the advice that was given to us by engineers as well as the city. The original plan was that, hey, the zoning change was coming on its own. And if you wanted to apply for it, yeah, it would already be in the zoning change itself. But later did I find out that, that it didn't go through, that it would be a process I would have to apply through. So that was just some bad advice. I must admit, if I were to do it all over again, this would be before you, before it was built. But believe me, it's been definitely more difficult on my end to make this happen. At the moment, like I said, it's still single unit. Nothing in it, would I am aware of the party wall that is required down the center, and that can be accommodated. The house has almost no load-bearing walls, so it's very we can change it in whatever process is required. So as for the bus stop inquiry, yes, that is in front of the house. But during my meetings with the city, that was an issue that was never really brought up. So unfortunately, I'm not aware as to what the protocol there is. But if it is deemed that it has to be moved, then so be it. Other than that, sorry if I'm missing anything else. Same thing with the fire route. It was a concern that was, at least I have not heard from anybody, but if that is the case, we will accommodate, obviously. Any other questions?
Okay. Do you have any further questions?
No, I don't. You answered quite a few things there, so thank you.
Okay, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Maz. Maz, is this the only property you have in Thorold?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Again, I just want to stress the importance of parking. I was on site, did visit with the proponent. The question I wanted to pose to him here was, will you guarantee that no additional parking spots are going to be created by just paving the front yard or paving the backyard to create the additional parking spots? Is that something you will be committing to?
No, so it will be as per the plan there, and there's no intentions for creating anything extra, or if somebody were to do it, that wouldn't be, they would be going against the plan there. So that's definitely not my intent, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You answered most of my other questions. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Mr. Khan, thank you for coming to council and speaking with us this evening.
Thank you.
At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on the application? Right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address.
My name is Farhan. I'm Ma's brother. 50 St. David, same address. I met with a counselor there today, and when we started this process, we emailed city back and forth, telling them clearly our intent that, the purpose is that we want to put a duplex on it. And we have multiple emails from city confirming that as of right now, zoning doesn't allow that, but the new zoning has passed. They're waiting for the new zoning to be passed so that duplex will be allowed. Coming back, so that's why we built it in a matter that, it's currently a single family home, but a duplex could be accommodated. So intention is Mars is gonna move into one unit, and I'm gonna move into the second unit. I met with a counselor today. We went over the whole thing. There is gonna be plenty of green space left on the front of the property, despite of the parking spots there, and even like back unit where if it is approved, I'm gonna move in. There is, despite of 2 parking spaces, there is a lot of, because it's a very deep lot, there is a lot of green space left for our kids to play. So that's really our intention. We are not developers. We just want a property where Mars can move into one unit, and I can move into one unit with our kids.
Okay.
Coming back to the issue of the bus stop, the concrete pad is extreme right of the property, so it does not impact the green space. It does not impact any parking spaces, none of those issues. And again, I'm happy to meet with anyone from building inspector there to go over the details.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Mayor, and all the applicants.
Thank you very much, Farhan. Is that anyone have any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Is there anyone else at this time online who wishes to speak on this application? Do we have anyone else? I'll ask again, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on this application? If not, I'll move on to 8.3, report and correspondence for information only, DS4 2022 zoning bylaw amendment, 50 St. David's Road West. I have a mover and a seconder. I have a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Please note, the final report respecting any recommendations on this matter will be brought forward on a future meeting of City Council. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 pursuant to Section 34. Council will consider staff's recommendation report immediately following the meeting. The public meeting portion of this application is now closed. Now we'll move on to presentations. We have two presentations this evening. Up first, we have one regarding the library board. Joanne De Quadros, Chief Librarian at Thorold Public Library, is going to present, and welcome, Joanne.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Ugolini, City Council and City staff. Congratulations on your election to City Council. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to introduce you to the Thorold Public Library Board. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to skip the slides. So on the next slide, we'll go over a little bit of the duties of the board. The primary duty of the library board is to ensure that our community receives public library service that is comprehensive, efficient, and a reflection on our community's needs. This is done by ensuring good governance of libraries management and operations. So our board focuses on, one, adopting policies that provide staff with clear guidance for operational decisions. So examples of policies include loan periods for items, fees for printing, meeting room rental policies, just to name a few. Second, the board monitors the library's performance through monthly statistics provided in the board package, and we will be introducing a formal feedback process in 2023. Three, the board provides strategic guidance, such as a strategic plan, a feasibility study on a renovation and expansion of the library, and currently we are undergoing a fundraising feasibility study. Our board is composed of 8 members. 7 are at-large community members and 1 council rep. The time commitment is around 3 hours per month, so that includes both meeting time and time to review the package. We hold 10 meetings a year with a break in the summer. We have a staff complement of 5 full-time employees, that includes myself, and 6 part-time employees. So the day-to-day running of the library and issues related to operations are my responsibility. So if as a counselor, you are appointed to the library board as our council representative, you can provide insight and strategic advice regarding the unique aspects of your library and municipal relationship through your familiarity with both organizations. So the following slide will show the outcome of good governance and a successful partnership between council and the library. So the library is an age-friendly service that benefits everyone, regardless of their age, background, and abilities, in 3 ways. First, the library is a gathering place where you can meet your friends to make a craft, teach your child to enjoy reading through music, songs and stories, discuss a book, and borrow seeds to plant a garden. Second, the library connects individuals with our community through programs. These programs happen both inside the library and out in the community. And this can be seen, there's a photo on the screen of the library participating in an event at Prince of Wales School. Lastly, the library is dynamic. The library strives to deliver relevant resources and services for our community. For example, last year the library received an Ontario Trillium Fund grant, and as part of the grant, we purchased 10 devices with data plans for patrons to borrow. So our library has an active role in the community, provides relevant services to meet those needs. These library services are well accessed, as confirmed by the City of Thorold's master plan, where the library is listed as the 2nd most used municipal facility in all of Thorold. And the library's usage statistics are on the next slide. We can do that. Thank you. So despite closures due to COVID, the library has demonstrated an increase in its overall year-to-year. So last year in 2021, 47,383 items were borrowed. At the end of November 2022, 55,987 items were borrowed. This is an increase of 18% in our circulation of library materials this year. The library ran 930 programs with 25,909 participants as of the end of November 2022, an increase of 19% in the number of programs and 3.7% in the number of participants. And the year is not yet over. So in total, based on the American Library Association's Public Library Value Calculator, and the Canadian Library Purchasing Power by Library Services Centre, our community received $2.5 million worth of services. So for the city of Thorold, it is a return on investment of $3.72 of every dollar of municipal funding. The library is really the best deal in town. But to continue building these services, resources, and partnerships, though, we need a strong library board. Today's public library is a community service that benefits everyone, as we've seen. It changes lives, strengthens communities, and helps meet municipal priorities, such as modernizing services, creating a safe gathering place for our community. By working together, library boards and councils provide responsive and innovative library service that meets the needs of our community. So if we can go to the next slide, please. It will highlight one of our biggest challenges the board will face in this new term, our facility. Facility development is one of the board's strategic directions and the board's vision to be a vibrant, inclusive community hub. As the library continues to adapt to the community's needs, the existing Thorold Public Library's facility is challenged to meet today's needs and is drastically undersized for the city's future. While Thorold's population has increased 55% since the building officially opened in 1983, the library still occupies the same 9,000 square feet it did 40 years ago. With Thorold being the fourth fastest growing community in Ontario and number one in Niagara, the city's population is expected to grow by another 66% to nearly 40,000 people over the next 30 years. It is vital then that we, the board and council, work together to keep building the library's resources, services, and facility so we can better meet the needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Joanne. And now I'm going to open the floor to any questions. Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, great presentation as you always. Thank you. I'm a big supporter of this. You know, it's not all about sports. It's about these types of things that are offered as well. Excited about the possibility of the expansion and finding money and stuff for it. Are you content? We last time. Last council meeting, we put the potential of having more councillors on a board. Are you open to that, or is that something you'd like to keep at one?
Yes, the board would be open.
Okay.
To more than one if.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good job.
Any other questions for Joanne? Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, thanks for the presentation. Just looking at your conceptual drawings here, and I know they're early stage drawings. When we talk about a housing crisis, has there been any consideration of looking at incorporating some housing in the project of expanding the library? Because that area has quite a bit of two-story buildings around it. Is that something that the board or yourself can at least look at as you move forward?
I can have the board look into that if you wish.
Yes, well, at least do some exploration. We have to start thinking out of the box in terms of trying to provide some housing and any opportunity, especially where there's a municipal building that we're building. If there's an opportunity there, it needs to be looked at. So if they can do that, that would be great.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the presenter? Seeing none, Joanne, I want to thank you very much for an excellent presentation and the excellent work that the Thorold Library does in our community. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're on to 11.2, Thorold Museum Development Plan, and I have Malcolm Woodhouse who's going to present on this topic. And are you there, Mel? Malcolm, are you there? If you are, you are muted.
Is that better?
Now I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I just wanted as well congratulate everybody on the successful campaign. I understand that from Matthew, the clerk, that the historical information report was sent to council today. I appreciate the speed in which all of this has happened. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll begin my presentation. I understand the clerk also has the PowerPoint presentation that if he would be kind enough to present through. Thank you.
It's up, so you're ready to go.
Yeah, thank you. If you could go to the next image. Thorold and Beaver Dams Historical Society, it was founded in 1894, and it was dedicated to the preservation, exploration, and promotion of the richly significant history enjoyed by Thorold and vicinity. Next image. In 1899, the society became the second member to join the provincial of Ontario newly created Ontario Historical Society. Next image. Through the following years and decades, the society and its volunteers began to expand its collection and would assemble displays at various municipal facilities, the latest being the Flight Locks Tourist Center, who now require that limited space for their own operations. Next image. On the advice and assistance from staff of the Ontario Historical Society, the members applied for and obtained a not-for-profit incorporation. The new Thorold Museum was born. National significant collection was now under the sole control of the new corporation. Next image. However, after severe flooding in Chestnut Hall facility, where many artifacts were being stored, the collection became imperiled. But with a large group of volunteers, it was quickly rescued, thank goodness. Knowing that the collection required safe storage, City Council was asked for help. Next image. Council requested senior staff to work with the group to ensure and secure the extensive collection and report back to council. This resulted in report PWCS 2022. Next image. The May 3rd, 22 report was unanimously approved by council. The new organization was challenged by council, but I think it was Councillor DeRose who said it best, and I'll paraphrase. Once council approved the report, he said, "Now it's up to your organization to get it done," were his parting words. His challenge was taken very seriously, and we immediately began our work to do just that. Next image. We used the 8,000 seed money to relocate bulk of the collection at the Allenburg Community Center and applying for charitable status. We have restructured the entire organization by doubling the board membership from 5 to 10 members, which reflects our incorporated constitution and bylaws. Next image. The board will now be comprised of members from City Council, hopefully, a representative from the local Indigenous community, a member of the BIA, a member of the local LACAC, Thorold's historian, a representative from Protection Hose Company number 1, and a member of the Ontario Genealogical Society, the Niagara branch, and then 3 members from the general public. Next image. You see our collection as it's being stored in part on the screen right now. We've also established the following support committees: finance, membership, fundraising, and building, and finally an advisory research committee as part of the board's work. We have begun recruiting members from various committees and have been very positive reaction throughout the community. Next image. And finally, we have completed our financial statements and will meet our requirements that is necessary to comply with our annual incorporation, the Canada Revenue Agency obligations as it relates to corporations. That's been done. The next image. We have and will continue to meet our obligations except for one thing, and that is to establish a community-based museum. And that is why I'm here tonight, and that is to get it done as we were challenged. 12 to 14 months from now, you will be vacating Fire Station Number 1 to relocate to the new state-of-the-art and long overdue, I must say, fire hall being built on Collier Road currently. We propose the following. Number 1, approve the transition of Fire Station Number 1 into the new Thorold Museum. Number 2, city to maintain the ownership of that facility. Number 3, lease the facility to the new tenant, your Thorold Museum Board. Approve staff report, reviewed Thorold Museum transformation budget as the landlord, and support the Thorold Museum grant and charitable status applications. Number 6 is to direct appropriate staff to apply for various federal and provincial grants to support the building restoration and transformation, such as a recently approved federal government announcing of the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings grants. This is a significant opportunity, and I've been told that this project is right in line with that particular grant. So it's a perfect match for funding to shed any of the cost of the renovations that need to be done for the transformation. This facility will become a community unto itself. As it's been pointed out, Thorold has and will continue to grow exponentially. Every robust community has a museum, but not Thorold. This facility must become a home of education, a home of knowledge, and a home of research, and not just displays. It must become a people meeting people place. And with that, Mr. Mayor and members of council, I conclude my comments. If anybody has any questions, please put them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. And now I'll open the floor for questions to our presenter. And do I have questions? Go ahead. I'll start with Councillor O'Hare.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Woodhouse. That was a very nice presentation. And I just want to say that I support the great idea of looking for a home for Thorold's treasures that should be on display and shared with the public, also as to be used as a meeting place. I think these are great ideas, and I really applaud your initiative and your energy and your enthusiasm. Thank you.
Questions, please. Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Woodhouse. Appreciate you showing up and great presentation. We definitely need something like this. Now, I just wanted to make a comment, not really a question. I was recently at the Welland Museum for a kid's birthday party with my son, and what a great, it was an old building, but the way they had it structured, so I'm just hoping that you guys maybe go to some local museums in the region. I'm sure you're familiar with them, just to pick their brain and get some ideas to what's conducive to a great amenity for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, address
go ahead and comment on that for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's a good point, Councillor DeRose, and we have discussed a number of opportunities. When I say a people meeting people place, I travel a lot on different museums, etc., and many times they're used for fundraising events, such as sit-down dinners, and it becomes a venue for these things. So we intend to pay our own way. We intend to pay our bill in terms of being a tenant and an operator of this facility. And in so doing, we have to raise operating monies to do that, which we're already underway in trying to raise those funds. And if this is approved by council, then we can then seriously get at the whole fundraising in terms of the changes that are going to be required for the building. But you're right, it becomes a people meeting people place.
Go ahead, Councillor Sentence. I got you, Councillor Hanley. I'll get to you next, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks, Mr. Woodhouse, for coming. Great presentation. As in the past, I've talked about the possibilities, and I don't want to get in the way of the museum. I see it as there one way or the other. Is there still the possibility of maybe thinking about, like Councillor D'Angela's idea of public buildings having housing on top? I know structurally it might not be able to do it, but would that partnership still be something you'd look at to take care of a couple of problems? I know Randy has been very frustrated over the years, and this would be great to find a home for everything, but it would also help us with affordable housing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the possibility of that is virtually nil in large part because of the fact that the building's located on a landfill, which was the former canal base. So the entire building sits on pilings, which are driven into the bedrock. There's also a rather large 8-foot sewer trunk that runs underneath that property. That's why if you look at the entire canal basin for that canal, you'll not see another building built on it. It's hugely expensive. So if you're going to build, and I understand the need, if you're going to build a building or housing, that's the wrong spot to put it. It really is. You cannot put a load on it. It's like your building that you're sitting in right now. It's a slab on grade construction. And if you wanted to build a second story onto that facility, you would have a hugely expensive cost in order to transform that over to make it happen. But it financially just wouldn't be viable or make sense. But I do understand your initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
No questions, Mr. Mayor, just comments when I can.
Yep, I'll first want to get through these questions. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Woodhouse, for the presentation. As you're aware, I'll cut right to it. Last term of council, we promised Thorold Nonprofit Housing the opportunity for the building. How do you suggest we move forward?
Well, I think, and I alluded to it in my last presentation to council, and having been the original one of the founding members of that board when it was originally initiated back in the 70s, I'm very familiar with what work they do, and I am also familiar with their financing and how it's has to be generated. I would suggest that if council was agreeable to it, that other properties that are located in the downtown core, because it does make sense to add housing to the downtown core for economic reasons as well as available facilities, then there are other lands available, including, for example, you're not using the old arena space. That you could incorporate, when you tear that down, you can incorporate a rather large housing facility on that property. Which, because it's owned property and it's got all the amenities it requires. That would be my suggestion. That makes far more sense than even wasting your time on this, 2-story building that sits on stilts.
Okay, I appreciate that answer, and I agree with you. I think this is an ideal location for a museum. So what are you asking from the City of Thorold as the next steps?
Can I just interrupt here? Because I had the clerk call up the motion. The motion was if we were selling the property, it was to purchase it. So I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, this would just be a lease agreement. It's not a purchase. It's not a sale of the property.
Okay, well, that sounds like a great answer. If legally that's...
No, I'm just going by what the motion said. That's
and that would be fantastic, because as I said at the time, I don't believe housing will work here, but I'll save my comments. So again, my question, Mr. Woodhouse, what are you looking from council today?
First off, to give us approval that you're in agreement that we can lease the facility from the city for $2 a year. I understand $2 is legal tender nowadays, not $1 anymore. Number one, and number two is that you support your staff report coming forward, because I think we can all agree, and if you look at any progressive community, museums eventually are taken over and run by municipalities. They're funded. It's another an addition to community services. In this case, you got a unique opportunity because you've got a group of people, which is a separate incorporated board that has the collection that the city doesn't own. The corporation owns the collection, and are prepared to put it on display and operate the facility, not for their own benefit, not for their own gain, financial or profit. All the monies that would be raised through this operation of this facility will go into maintaining the operations. we're committed to raising funds to renovate as a tenant would inside the building to make the transition that we need to do. However, right now, there's a massive grant that's been approved by the federal government. I was speaking with Vance Badaway's office. They feel very confident that this project fits the criteria for that grant. That grant is in the number of billions of dollars, but it has to be submitted by February 28th. If you miss that date, you get nothing. There's no going back. So the importance of approving this now allows your staff to put together that grant application, do an appraisal and assessment on the building in terms of putting in conversion for solar panel on the roof, for example, upgrading the heating system to mini boilers from the old Napanee 1960 boiler that's there. Those kind of things, windows, all those kind of modifications will be covered under that grant. And if we can get that grant application in and have staff give them the ability to put together that application, we'll work with them clearly, then that in itself could cost the city virtually hardly anything in terms of making the conversion to this building if we're successful on the grant. Now you own a building, you're the landlord, you own the building, it's upgraded, it's current, it's state-of-the-art in terms of energy, greening and all those, and you've got a group of volunteers that are operating and running it for you. As far as I'm concerned, this is a win-win-win. You know, this is, there's no downside to this. And at some point in the future, you know, when old guys like me die off and there's less and less people ability to volunteer, hopefully there always will be, but the city can take it over and run it and then have the collection there and run it as any other municipality would. So that's the project, that's the plan, and that's what I'm asking for.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer. So you had mentioned a few times there that there's a report, the city report, or are you asking us to request a report? Because I haven't seen a report.
A report was approved by council in May of this year, which allocated $8,000 money to the museum board to do a number of things. Number one was to get the collection and put it in storage, and we signed an agreement with the city to use rental space at the Allenberg Community Center where the bulk of the collection is. The collection is still scattered in some other facilities because it was in danger. And I can tell you, I've spoken with the head of the Ontario Historical Society, who has told me that our collection, he's very familiar with the collection. He said the collection that Thorold has is not only Thorold like a municipality or provincially or regionally, it's of national significance. So we've got a real treasure here, and we've got a great history, and this would give us the ability to do that. So I hope I've answered your question.
Go ahead, Councillor Long.
You've answered a question, but I guess my question moving forward, we obviously need staff to come back and give us a report on the viability of your plan. So how much time do we have to do that? Because I don't think we can make give you an answer tonight, although we may all agree with the concept.
You don't want to jeopardize the grant application. And in order to do the grant, this is an extensive application, Councillor. Your staff is going to have to bring in a cost consultant to put some numbers to the renovations and the changes that you want to make on the building as the building owner. That grant has to get in, as I said, before February 28th at 3 p.m. Now, in order to get that money, then I think from a staff perspective, I would be asking staff to do just that. You know, get an appraisal on a building in terms of what needs to be done to make it in compliance with that grant application and start filling out that grant. Number one, you're the owner of the building, you can do that right away. In terms of second approval is approving us to be the tenant to go in there for $2 a year. And if you approve that now, then we can then start right away in raising funds. So when you vacate that building, hopefully we will have enough funds to start the internal renovations that's going to transform it from a fire hall into a museum.
Okay, I'll let other councillors ask questions. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you want to get a staff to find out from staff what that would curtail? Jeff, do you want to comment on that? What kind of timelines Is it February 28th? Is that the deadline, Mel? Can you please?
Yes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have to go through the grant application to see what all is involved. I think it's appropriate to bring back a request in a report for council to consider not just this project, but maybe some of the other projects that might fit the categories as well, so it's a more comprehensive look. I recognize the work that the Thorold Museum has done here. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting that we've asked them to do, and building a new board that will help them through this process. But our window is really, the 3 meetings that we have. I think the latest meeting that we could get something to council would be on the 28th of February, which is the date that the application is due. So we have some work to do if we're going to get a report back to council, but we'll do our best to get it to you.
But as well, if I could, Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
Jeff's
go ahead, Mel.
I believe it's 3:00 p.m. that has to be received and acknowledged, date stamped, time stamped by the federal government, or else you're not going to get nothing.
Do you have any further?
No further questions.
Okay, I've got Councillor Decker.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Longo. I'd like to get a report before we make a decision. I know we've committed to perhaps selling the building, so we haven't decided if we're going to sell it or lease it. I love the idea of the museum. The presentation that Mel brought to the table was excellent. Personally, I'd love to see the museum and the library coordinate together, and I'm not sure if that's a possibility either. But I believe we need a report, and what is it going to cost the city if we have to put any money into repairs and consultant fees, etc.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo, and then I got Councillor O'Hare.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Decker sort of mentioned, Mr. Woodhouse, has there been any collaboration with the library at all, or is this the site that the museum wants and it's all or nothing? Or is there an opportunity to have some synergies? Because most municipal buildings that are being built these days have multiple uses, library, rink, museum, like they're all being interconnected, just because the cost becomes a little easier to bear on a municipality. At the end, you mentioned it will be probably eventually run by the municipality once the volunteer base sort of drops off in due time. Is that something that the museum has given some consideration to, partnering either with the library or some other fashion to move forward that meets the needs of the museum at the same time?
Go ahead, Mel.
We have actually in the past worked with the library. I was on council when we built that library, so it was a long time ago, but the whole idea behind that concept at the time was Chestnut Hall was to be merged with the library so that it could be a museum and a learning opportunity for it. That was, as was pointed out by the previous presenter, over 40 years ago. That building has since, we've stored stuff in there for that a lot of time. We almost lost the collection because of flooding in that building. Now, if council wants to approve a new building being constructed and making it a museum on that property, I think that's your choice to make. But the challenge I think you would have with that is that if you're worried about what it's going to cost you to make a conversion from this fire hall building, which you already own and it's constructed, compared to building a new facility, you're probably looking in the vicinity of probably, I'm going to say, $12 to $15 million. So I know the city's got a lot of money in reserves, and I know the mayor's got a lot of money in his bank account there. I mean, he might be able to chip in a few bucks, but that would be what that would involve. So you're looking at an addition onto the library itself, which is probably 11 million. And then you're looking at adding a museum on top of that. That's another, 12 to 14 million, let's say, maybe let's say it's 10. Then that's what the numbers would be.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for those numbers. I appreciate that. But I think if a report's coming back, I think we have to have some options in there. Mr. Woodhouse, you also mentioned the old arena location of what council's doing with that. We have to start looking from a council perspective of amalgamating and putting some services together as opposed to isolating them and stranding them all over the city. We do that with our parks right now, and it costs more money in the long run, and it's tougher to manage. So I think we could go down a parallel path and make sure we're looking at different options, not just one specific one, just in case the ball or it falls off the table, there's something else that we're looking there. So we're not starting at square one, but I think we should parallel some of these opportunities.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
Seeing that we're not actually doing questions, it's more or less comments and questions
You
together.
might as well get your comments.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Malcolm Woodhouse. Mal, is your intention tonight, like I sent out today, to have a motion put through the floor that once the vacated tow pass station is vacated, that it be leased to the museum board in perpetuity for $2 per year, and pass that tonight so that you'll be able to initiate the fundraising initiative that you need to commence with the federal government that needs to be due on February 28th. Is that the intention here tonight? Because I'm intending to do that.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to state that I'm in full support of it, and the fact is, you know, what some don't realize, we have an 1894 hose reel, we got a 1937 Bickle Seagrave, we got a 1958 International fire truck. They're all being stored in a barn right now. Their lifespan lessened over time with the area that we're storing in. They're a big part of this community. We have the first hose reel the city ever purchased back then, and we need to consider that. The building, we know, Mal is very talented, isn't suitable for housing. Tear down the old arena, we sell the air rights with a museum down below, whatever, or a library down below, and we make a building above. It's been done in other municipalities, and it can be done in Thorold. So when I can, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, if I have to, ask for a procedural bylaw passed tonight.
I'll let the clerk answer that, because that would require a notice of motion. So I'll let the clerk.
But I also could put a motion forward tonight and ask for a waiver of the procedural bylaw and have the motion brought forward tonight. You can obviously tell, and it's a time-sensitive matter, so it can be brought to the floor without being delayed any further, because it is a time-sensitive matter.
Very critical.
I'll let the clerk speak to that.
So, Mr. Mayor, I can advise that you are correct. Councillors shall provide notice of motion in advance of any business. To Councillor Handley's point, there is a provision in the bylaw under notice of motion for section 11.2. If it's deemed absolutely necessary to not delay consideration, notice may be waived, but council would have to pass a motion with a 2/3 majority in order to do so.
Councillor Hanley, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would then, Mr. Mayor, ask that I be able to put that to the floor so that we may be able to waive the procedural bylaw so that we can move this motion forward. Also to comment on it, being a member of the association, we've had the leased properties. We've tried to go to the Trillium Foundation. They've told us that we would be also eligible for a grant, protection host company number 1 through the Trillium Foundation, but we had to have a secure site with lease ownership type of deal and being city property, which this would fit right into it. So that's why a member of the association was also a member. So if I could put a motion to the floor that we waive the procedural bylaw, therefore I could bring my motion to the floor that I sent out earlier today with my known intentions.
So I need a seconder to waive the procedural bylaw. Councillor Hanley has wants to waive the procedural bylaw. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Hare? Councillor Hare seconds that motion.
Therefore, Mr. Mayor, seeing that I have a seconder, I would ask that it be going to the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor, is that we waive the procedural bylaw. All those in favor?
Can we ask questions? I just want clarity.
Go ahead.
So what we're agreeing to today is to lease it to them?
No, we're not. This is to waive the procedural
Got it.
bylaw
Okay.
to see
I have
if
a
we
question
want the
after that.
motion to come to the floor.
Okay.
Okay, that's all this is. And we need 2/3 to waive the bylaw to bring that to the floor. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Yeah, 2/3, right? Okay.
Vote therefore, Mr. Mayor, if I could then at this time, moved by myself and seconded by Council O'Hare, that the once vacated towpath fire station be leased to the museum board in perpetuity for $2 per year, and such be approved by council on this 20th day of December 20th, 2022.
You got that? Then we're going to open the floor up for discussion on that motion. Okay, Councillor Longo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanley, because it's his motion. So just some questions, Councillor Hanley. I'm okay with it being a museum, but we're going to lease it in perpetuity for $2 a year. So who's going to be responsible for the retrofit, the upgrade, whatever needs to be done for the museum? Is there going to be any responsibility of the city?
Well, that's a question that no one can answer at this time. Definitely, I think we would understand that. But what this would do, this would be able to get the ball rolling so that they could solicit the federal government for the funding of February 28th. And in the interim, we could have a report come back to council. And as Mr. Woodhouse has acknowledged, that there's a possibility here that it could be of zero cost to the city. But until we get the ball rolling, if we wait until a city report to come back, we forget about any opportunity for any type of fundraising. And then if council at that time did pass the museum, it would be 100% burden of the cost to the taxpayers. Right now, by passing this, I believe it would relieve the city of 100% burden. And again, as put out, Councillor Long, if I can, is that we do not have a museum in this city, and I believe, as many believe, that it's about time that we do something to establish a museum in the city, because we do have a lot of great history here.
Okay.
And I have a significant amount of history in my own house, and I'm sure former Mayor Mal does.
And I agree, Councillor Hanley, we need a museum, but I also don't want my empty wallet to be part of that museum. So my question is, don't you think it would be better that we ask for a staff report to come back to the next meeting with the financial obligations regarding your proposal? Because it seems to me you're hoping that we get funding, and if we don't, we've committed to a lease in perpetuity and we'll be responsible to retrofit and maintain the building. And if that's the will of council, I'm okay with it, but is that okay with you?
Okay, well, here's my motion is once the building is vacated.
Yeah, but wait.
So from now, we have 14 months' time before the building may be vacated, and within that time frame may be a certain amount of time so that we could actually see to it what type of fundraising would have to be committed to. Myself personally, for what we've spent money on in this municipality in the last little while, I think the museum is an important factor, and I know we're going down a road without knowing the cost, but also at the end of St. David's Road, we went down the road without knowing the cost either.
Let's stick to the.
I don't want to get into that point, so that's a discussion for another day. But anyways, Councillor Long, to answer your point, I can't answer that question. We don't know if it's going to cost the city anything. Like nobody can answer the question how much our taxes are going to go up this year after the budget. None of us know until it actually comes to fruition.
Okay, that's enough on that. If you have any questions, or if you want to make an amendment to that motion to cover your concerns.
Can I just make a final comment to the motion?
Yeah.
Again, I support a museum in Thorold. There's no question about it. But I also support responsible spending. And without knowing the cost and hoping that it all turns out, that's not the way I vote. I won't vote on a hope. So I need more information from staff to understand what the potential ramifications are. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Let me ask a question to Jeff. Could we have a report next meeting, and would that allow enough time to turn around and get an application in? I know those are tight timelines, but that's a question we need answered.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, the more time we have, the more accurate and up-to-date the information can be. It gives us really 2 meetings to get something back to council. So if we can't make the January council meeting, we could make the first meeting in February.
But would that give you time? Would that give us time to do an application? That's my question, and have it in time.
as Mr. Mayor, as Mr. Woodhouse says, the application's due on the 28th of February, so we would have a couple of weeks to finalize the application.
So it's doable, is my question.
Everything's doable.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Longo, 100%. We need and want a museum. However, there's just too many unknowns for me to make a decision on behalf of residents tonight. I don't know just one ideal. If Mr. Woodhouse, you're more experienced in politics than I am. Would Vance be able to, maybe Mr. Badaway be able to get an extension due to circumstances? Is that possible? Is this is this the only grant we can access, or is it a one-time thing? Or see, there's just too many unknowns to make a commitment to that. It's in my opinion, but we're 100% behind you. But I just think it's rushing it is not conducive to making a proper decision in my respect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Dividitis.
I totally agree with Mr. DeRose and Mr. Longo, especially in this environment. It's not wise to go forward without having a budget of what you're going to spend. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And for me, having experience with development, sometimes it gets out of control. So we have to have staff do the due diligence first, especially when you're talking this kind of money.
Thank you. Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, to the other councillors, I agree. It sounds like we can get this done still, so that's the positive thing. According to Jeff, I liked your answer. I just think we need more answers and a staff report, and 100% behind this project. But I think it's got to be done with, as Jeff just said, and I think we can get this done and nobody loses money and the museum is still there.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
I concur with the rest of the council here. I think we need to look at a risk analysis, not just the financial one, but some of the other risks that are involved with moving forward with this. I think if we could get that report here, because we're not going to get financial numbers by January, was it 20th or whatever the date is in January? For 17th. We're not going to get that tight financial numbers, but it's more of the risks. And some of the items, like even the grant, is it a matching grant or is it 100% funding? Like some of those answers could be put into the report coming forward in January, and we can make more of an educated decision here. I don't think you'll find anyone on this council chamber that's opposed to the idea, but I think we have to move forward in a strategic manner to make sure that we're representing the citizens of Thorold in a respectful manner. So if the mover of the motion could amend it so that we can
get a staff report.
A staff report at the next council meeting in January, as opposed to forcing us to vote on an issue here and now. It may not go well.
Councillor Hanley, you've heard your fellow councillor speak. Are you good with that?
All we need to do, Mr. Mayor, is add one more line to my motion. That would be that once vacated, Towpath Fire Station be leased to the Museum Board of Perpetuity for 2 years, and such be approved following a report brought to council with financial implications.
Well, I don't know if that answers the question. The question is,
other than that, it's just withdraw the motion
the question
and
is
have
that,
it brought back as a report.
That the staff report come back, and then when council has that information, they can move forward. We've heard from staff that we can make the turnaround time. It's tight, but we can do it if everybody is in agreement at that time when they see the facts and figures. Go ahead, Councillor Dan.
I was going to suggest if we could support the idea in principle and have a staff report come forward for the January meeting, then we could make a better motion at that point in time when the staff reports. And I'll even let Councillor Hanley make the motion at that point in time, but I'd like to see a little bit of meat on this with a staff report so it helps us facilitate moving forward.
And the other thing we can include in that, this is just my point of view, is that it's tied to them getting that funding.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, my goal here, Mr. Mayor, I think the council can see, is just to get the ball rolling. Whatever's needed here tonight, to get the ball rolling, and by the sounds of Mr. Woodhouse, he could be very instrumental in helping us with that funding.
So basically, what we want to do here tonight is we want to get a staff report back at the next meeting with more details on moving forward with that in principle. Is that the best way to say it?
Yes, and working in context with Mr. Woodhouse and the museum board. Because I'm sure that they've already know the.
I'm just waiting for the clerk to draft it up and everybody can see it before we vote on anything. And then you have to be in agreement with these changes, Councillor, because
I don't disagree with anybody. I know we're always running into what classifications may be or not, but I think council sees my intent here, just to be able to do whatever it needs so that we can try to get the ball rolling. I thank you very much.
Thank you. And once you get it, I'll let you read it, and then everybody can see exactly what they're voting on.
Mr. Mayor, could I say something, because it was mentioned, if you give me that liberty?
Yes, go ahead,
Thank you.
Malcolm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. The critical timeline here is that two things. Number one, and if Councillor DeAngela's comment about agreeing to it in principle allows the project to move ahead, that shows a commitment. But the most critical, which is what you're going to need to do in order to apply for the grant, if that's acceptable, then that's fine. And if the biggest part of this whole thing is whether or not the city can get the application in before the deadline. And to answer Councillor DeRose, I thought ahead. There's no way that they will extend this grant. They never do. They never have, and they're not going to do it for Thorold. And this is a national grant. This is billions. This is $5 billion that's going to be available for infrastructure.
No, they won't extend it.
This is our shot at it.
Okay, so thank you, Malcolm. And now we're going to read the motion. Go ahead.
That staff be directed to prepare a report respecting the financial implications of approving a motion in principle that once vacated, the Fire Station 1 property located on Towpath Street be leased to the museum board in perpetuity for $2 per year.
Excellent.
Council, is everybody good with that? Is there anybody that's not good with that? Please speak. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through Mr. Mayor, does that mean we're committing to the lease at this moment?
No, we're getting the report with all the financials.
And subsequently, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody's good with that. Go ahead. Did you?
Need a seconder?
No.
We can treat that as friendly if the mover and seconder, that's Councillor Hanley and Councillor O'Hare, agree.
You're good with that, Councillor Hanley? Councillor Hanley, you're good with that? Yeah, you're mute.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Malcolm, for coming to council tonight. And thank you for your excellent presentation.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. Okay. We're moving now on to motions for council support. Santa Claus Parade and Canada Day celebrations, and I'll turn this over to Councillor Decker. And do you have a seconder for this? Councillor Sentence, okay. Read, you're up. It's your motion. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just on my computer, I can't read my entire motion. It's cut off. If Matthew could just bring it up so I can at least get it all in, that would be lovely. Perfect. Okay, whereas the Corporation of the City of Thorold successfully administered the 2022 Canada celebrations and the 2022 Santa Claus Parade as city-run events, whereas the Corporation of the City of Thorold Community Services staff worked to support the efforts of community volunteers in the organization and the implementation of these events, and whereas events such as these bring the community together for shared experience of celebrating volunteerism and the community groups which made up the city. Therefore, be it resolved that the Corporation of the City of Thorold enacts as follows. that the Canada Day celebration and the Santa Claus Parade be considered as part of the 2023 budget deliberations as annual city run events.
Thank you. And that was moved by Councillor Decker and seconded by Councillor Sentence. Are there anybody that has any questions? Please, the floor is open. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is there a set budget? First of all, I just wanted to say, we already took care of the Canada Summer Games celebrations, correct?
That's not part of this. This is Canada Day and the Santa Claus Parade to move them forward to budget deliberations for this year. Those two events.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Up next, I have mature. What?
Councillor Hanley was.
What? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Was just voting for it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Duly noted. Okay, 12.2, mature tree preservation. I have a motion coming from Councillor O'Hare. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I do. Councillor Longo.
Councillor Longo is the seconder. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion respecting the preservation of mature trees in the city of Thorold, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Longo. Whereas Section 1351 of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 C25, the Act, as amended, provides that City Council may, by bylaw, prohibit or regulate the destruction or injuring of trees. Whereas mature trees provide numerous ecological, environmental, and aesthetic benefits to the city of Thorold. Whereas the loss of mature trees can have detrimental impacts on our community, including increased flooding, decreased air quality, and reduced property values. Whereas the protection of mature trees is essential for the long-term health and vitality of our community, and whereas the Council of the City of Thorold deems it desirable to regulate and control the removal, maintenance, protection of mature trees. Therefore, be it resolved that the Corporation of the City of Thorold enacts as following: that staff be directed to prepare a report respecting the implementation of such a mature tree policy for the City of Thorold, including, but not limited to, the establishment of protective measures for mature trees, including, but not limited to, tree conservation areas, tree protection zones, and tree protecting plans. The creation of penalties and enforcement measures for the destruction or harm of mature trees without proper authorization. The development of a program for the replanting and stewardship of mature trees in our community. The incorporation of public education and outreach efforts to raise awareness of the importance and value of mature trees in our community. That the report includes a draft bylaw for Council's consideration to implement the recommendations of the report. And Mr. Mayor, if I may speak on the
yes,
motion?
you may. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. Today, just about everyone is aware of the threats of climate change. We know that there will be some tough choices to make as we face global warming, but not all of our choices we have to make are difficult, nor do they require great investment. Simple things, such as protecting our mature tree canopy and ensuring that we continue to put more and more trees in the ground, will pay back huge dividends in our fight against our ensuing climate crisis. It's simply not enough to plant young trees to replace a mature tree canopy. Our urban forest must ideally be comprised of trees of all ages. We need to maintain our healthy mature trees because they are a vital resource for our community. We all know that large trees remove pollutants from the air, soil, and water. We know that through the absorption of stormwater runoff, mature trees help lighten the load on our infrastructure costs. Mature trees can assist us with natural energy conservation. In the summer, heat islands can be reduced simply through the shade, and in the winter, windbreaks created by mature tree canopies can reduce heating costs. Aside from making our city more beautiful and attractive to everyone, it's important to ensure that our tree canopy, which can take years and decades to create, is protected and continues to do what it naturally does to make our city healthier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hare. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. When it talks about development of a program of replanting and the stewardship of mature trees in our community, is that both on private and public property? Just for clarity, is that the intent?
Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to look at both areas, but of course we need staff reports to see how we can make this work most effectively and suit many, many needs. But I would like to be able to address both areas.
Okay. And then also, just in terms, do we have right now, do we have a tree replacement policy at hand for trees?
Who would answer this question? I know that every year in budget we have a replacement, but is there a strict policy, or is, Jeff, go ahead.
Yes, there is a policy, and we can attach that certainly to this report and talk about, I think the problem has been when it comes to fund the program, we often fall short there, but perhaps there's opportunities to work with the development community, and there are other groups that are interested in, replanting and protecting certain species of trees. We do have an old report that was done in, I believe it was 2020, that looked at the urban canopy and made some recommendations, but through the various budget deliberations and during COVID, we didn't really get much traction on it.
Okay, Matthew, Mr. Mayor, maybe if that could be redistributed to the council, especially the ones that weren't on council at the time.
Absolutely, we'll make sure that gets done.
Because during campaigning, you get a lot of suggestions, but there was a lot of requests for trees, so I'm not sure exactly how we prioritize a tree request. Is there something on our website that we could add there? Like, these are the things I'd like to see in the report, ways that we can make it easier and streamlined for a citizen to ask for a tree. I've seen the ash trees that have been cut down, and now they're bushes and they're on city property, and I see other trees being planted on other city property, so we're not even replacing the trees that were all damaged, but yet we're planting them elsewhere and they're not being taken care of and they're dying. So those, I don't know, I guess my question to this report is, when do you see this coming back? And if it's not going to be before budget time, we'll need other information to make sure that we move forward with at least replacing trees in 2023. Again, I guess my question is, when is a realistic time for this policy to come back to council for deliberation?
I think we'll need a couple of months, Mr. Mayor, to collect the information. Some of the things we might be able to implement right away. Some of the things may take a little bit more time, particularly with respect to the protection of trees on private property, and how we maybe incorporate some of these areas into, it might be through our land use planning tools, or some other means of protecting some of these properties.
And the other thing is, in budget, there'll be a line item on tree replacement. So that's an item that council's going to look at and see how much money they're willing to, what staff recommends and how much we end up spending on tree replacement. And every year that is a budgetary item.
Okay, just along that line, Mr. Mayor, though, so I don't anticipate this overall policy to come back before budget time. Probably a little pressing to get it back before then. So I'm really concerned more on what we're doing during budget and how we're going to manage to get these tree requests out there for the citizens, so we come up with some sort of system. That to me is a little bit of more of a priority in the short term, but long term look at this policy without putting pressure on staff. Like, I don't expect you to come back in 2 months with a report. If it's going to take 3 or 4, I'd rather give you that time to come back with a comprehensive report. But I still want to deal with getting more canopy out there as sooner than later. And I think that's critical, that we have some sort of direction that we can follow.
And that usually is, it's a part of a budget every year. And So the council will.
Yeah, but Mr. Mayor, is that communicated well to the citizens? Is there a request for a tree on our website? Like, those are the things that aren't being done.
No, but
need to be done.
we can put so much money aside, but how it's used and what trees are planted is a separate thing. But at budget, we're gonna assign so much money for that tree replacement.
Yes, but my critical thing is getting that money spent to get those trees out there. It's not gonna grow roots in a bank. It needs to be planted in the ground.
Well, we do plant them every year, and we always
Yes,
run,
Mr.
we
Mayor. Okay,
always, we always run out of money because we don't put enough in the tree replacement.
Yeah, but my point is, there's trees that are being put out there. There's no systematic system of doing it. Drive down Richmond Street and see the bushes that we have growing that used to be ash trees. That's the concerns I have. That's the concerns citizens have. That's what I'd like to see addressed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Dividend.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the maintenance of trees and pruning to take care of our old trees. I like to take, especially the one on Hollow Road and all around Thorold, some of those old trees, that start pruning them. Do we have a maintenance program to take care of these old trees, to keep them healthy?
I'm sure Sean could answer that, or Jeff.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how much we spend annually, but that'll come out in the budget. There are some things that we can do. Our staff is trained to provide that particular service, and some things we have to contract out because of the height or the scope of the work.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask Councillor O'Hare. To me, when I first read the motion, I know you added some suggestions, but I think we're more concerned here about destroying trees that don't need to be destroyed, and especially historic ones. Am I correct? Because I think we're getting kind of off base a bit. You know what I'm saying? Am I correct? Or if you can explain yourself, it'd be great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor DeRose, there really are two very clear ways of looking at this program. One is to make sure that trees, mature trees, our strong canopy is preserved and not taken down negligently. We want to make sure we maintain those. And part B definitely is to get more trees into the ground. So I agree with Mr. Holman as well that a good study report should be prepared so that when we do this, we do it properly, so that we are looking after the great tree growth that we have, the great canopy that we do have, making sure that we preserve that, but also putting more in the ground. As you know, many parts of Thorold are lacking in tree growth, and the sooner we get them into the ground, all the better. We know it's going to take multiple years for them to reach to that mature size.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Maybe the staff, should these two things be separate, Jason or Jeff? It kind of seems cramming too much stuff together in a bylaw. Should these be separate, possibly, or what's your suggestion?
Go ahead, Jason.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor DeRose. I think Councillor O'Hare is looking at two different things potentially. One being a bylaw regulating the destruction of existing trees, but second, a plan in preserving and enhancing our canopy within the municipality. So I think they could both be addressed, and I think they would most appropriately be addressed in the same report potentially. I agree with Mr. Holman that it will take a little while to do a wholesome review and bring forward a proper proposal to council. But I think they are two different things, but could all be covered under the same report, and it will require multiple departments' input on that report. If I could, Mr. Mayor, as well, just add, in the short term or shorter term, we are currently working with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority on an initiative they have to plant 2 billion trees on public lands, not just in Thorold, obviously, but that is what potentially may be a shorter initiative to help enhance the tree canopy while we're working on this as well.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley.
I think it's a great initiative, and I do believe on the city's bylaws, we already have a policy in place. All a resident has to do is request a tree, and we have a policy. I recollect that if a tree was taken down in an individual's yard, that it was their request forward to the city that would have another tree planted in its place. The city just does not plant it. But any resident does not have a tree in front of its house, the city policy, I believe right now states all you need to do is make that request, and that's been on the books for some time. And I do support the initiative.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor.
If I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can just add what Mr. D'Angelo said, Councillor D'Angelo said, and that is, sorry, drawing a blank. You don't remember what he said now? Okay, 1 second. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. My apologies. That we look at somehow updating the website so that the information is readily available to residents of Thorold, so that, as also Councillor Handley pointed out, that should someone be in need or request a tree, that the steps are very clearly laid out so that it can be put into action quickly.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now I'll call on Councillor Handley for his motion respecting an organizational review. And do you have a seconder, Councillor Handley? I can't hear you, Councillor Handley. You're muted, please.
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Is there a seconder, Councillor DeRose? Okay.
Thank you then, Mr. Mayor. Therefore, whereas the corporation, the city of Thorold, is the 4th fastest growing municipality in Ontario and the 8th fastest in Canada, whereas Thorold's current and future growth over the next decade will require similar growth in the services needed to support the growth of the community, whereas an organizational assessment and review is a process by which information about how an organization functions and delivers its services is collected, analyzed, and shared with a view to enhance organizational success through proper functional alignment and operating processes and procedures. And whereas an external organization review of the City of Thorold's business functions, programs, and services is necessary to ensure the effective and efficient delivery of municipal services to the residents of Thorold, therefore be resolved that the corporation of the City of Thorold enacts as follows: that issuance of a request for proposal for an external organization review be considered as part of the 2023 budget deliberations. If I, Mr. Mayor, I do believe this is very important, seeing, as I mentioned, how fast this municipality is growing. We know the corporation needs to grow as far as an employment enhancement, and this is just the motion that will have this organization review considered and discussed in further detail at our 2023 budget deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No other comments.
Thank you, Councillor Handley. Is there anyone else to wish to speak to that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Physician recruitment. I'll call on Councillor DeRose for a motion respecting physician recruitment. Do you have a seconder, Councillor DeRose?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder for this
I'll
motion?
second it.
Councillor Decker. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Mayor.
ahead, Councillor.
Through you. Whereas Niagara is still classified as an underserviced community by the Ministry of Health when it comes to physician services, whereas the City of Thorold, among others in Niagara, is listed as high physician need and in need of continued and active physician recruiting, and whereas the Regional Municipality of Niagara administers the Niagara Physician Recruitment Program to promote family practice opportunities and to attract and retrain physicians in Niagara. Therefore, be it resolved that the Corporation of the City of Thorold enacts as follows: that Regional Councillor Tim Whalen be requested to advocate through Niagara Region's Public Health and Social Services Committee for assistance in the proactive recruitment of family physicians to the City of Thorold, and to request information be circulated to Thorold City Council on any efforts currently in progress. 2, that the Mayor be directed to send a letter to Niagara Region's Medical Officer of Health and Niagara Region's Physician Recruitment Specialist, stressing the city's need and for proactive recruitment. And 3, that this motion and the letter from the Mayor be circulated to the Region's Public Health and Social Services Committee, Regional Councillor Whalen, the Medical Officer of Health, the Physician Recruitment Specialist at Niagara Region, and Niagara's members of Provincial Parliament. And could I just speak
yes,
to it?
Yes, you can.
Too,
Go
Mr. Mayor?
ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, the reason, I know we talked about this last term of council, but I think we have to keep being adamant about this. I know so many people in town that don't have the best of health and are struggling to find a doctor, and I really feel for them, because some of them are personal friends of mine and family. I think we need to, they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think we need to be the squeaky wheel. Approximately half our taxes go to the region. The region, I believe, has at least 3 physician recruiters, and we need to get on their priority list ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Does anyone else want to speak to that motion? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll ask you this question. The physician, when I was at the region as capacity of mayor, they had the physician recruitment committee, and it also included councilors or mayors, regional councilors on there. Is there still a committee that is there at this point in time, or is it just the recruiters themselves?
I'm not aware that there is a committee. I will check into it. I know that Councillor Whalen sits on the public health, so I'll have him follow up on that.
Okay, because I know in the past they did have that. And I was going to offer a friendly amendment. If you want to add an item number 4, can we not request the physician recruitment specialist to come to council to do a presentation and let us know exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then we can ask them some questions directly as opposed to going through our regional counselor by the time he comes and goes.
We did that last term of council. It's a great idea. Let's do that again.
If the councilors who moved in second, if we can make that item number 4 to request the specialist to come to the earliest meeting possible in our council agendas so that we can have a bit of discussion.
I'll accept that friendly amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we did that last council, and it's a good time to do it again, for sure. Go ahead, Councillor Dividitis.
This is, can we make our own little incentive program to attract doctors? The city of Belleville did it, and they had $150,000 for a 5-year commitment, where it's for young doctors, and they were payment over the 5-year period. And since they had that program, they attracted 34 doctors.
We don't have a program in place. We did have a program years ago. I'll let Maria speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, a number of years ago, we did have a program. It was $70,000 over a 5-year term, and I believe we were able to attract 3 or 4 doctors at that time.
Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Yeah, just to, it's a great concept, but I know having some intricate conversations with our previous economic development officer, he and people in his position argued against that, and I don't know the intricacies of why, but they just they don't think it's necessary. But I think we had this discussion last year. I think Councillor Decker brought it up.
Yeah, we did go through that discussion.
So I think there's more cons than pros to it. Because a lot of times they just leave after the period. But we can always look at other people that are doing it or best practices. But I remember I was advised against it because I thought the same thing as Councillor Decker.
Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Yeah, if I could add, I was on council when we recruited those doctors, and at that time, cash incentives were trying to attract doctors. But what happened is then we were competing with all 12 local municipalities here in Niagara because they were all a bigger municipality would up that ante, so then that doctor would go to that place. So it wasn't. That's why it sort of formed into a regional attraction of doctors, because if we could get any doctor into the region, it benefits the whole region, because most of us, like, we visit doctors throughout the region, depending on where you go for a hospital or special testing. They're not necessarily all in Thorold, but I know we want to get more GPs in Thorold. But the financial incentives were good back then, but I think things have changed dramatically subsequent to that. But I think that would be a good question to ask the recruiter if the region does provide a financial package, because they may be doing that right now.
Yeah, so that's another good reason why we should have the recruiter come to council. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. That's the last one, right? Okay, now, under statement by councilors, I'll call on Councillor Hanley for his statement respecting Christmas spirit donations for families. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I just want to acknowledge individuals know publicly and that we had a very tough time happening not only in our city, in our province, in our country. And I just wanted to make note of the generosity given by members of council and members of the public, and that we were able to help 8 families this year, plus Brian Fournier's group. As you know him, he has a group. We're going to have a celebration of Christmas for them, and we're able to take care of 15 children with gifts, presents, food, and clothing, and we're also able to help the homeless this year. It's a realization that, yes, Thorold does have homeless. They're living out in our bush area, unfortunately, but through gracious donations of citizens, we were able to clothe them, supply them with food, supply them with cooking utensils and other necessity things so that they may be able to try to be somewhat comfortable through the winter season. So I just want to thank everybody for their Christmas spirit and what they've done, and it makes for a good Christmas and a Merry Christmas to some people who otherwise wouldn't be able to have such. And I just wanted to let that know publicly and thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for what all they did this Christmas season.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hanley, and thank you for organizing that. Okay, we're going to move on to delegations to report. Report PWCS 118-2022 respecting South Main Street Bridge Eco Park project update. And we had a written delegation from Ron Devereaux, a resident of Thorold. And he sent a delegation that everybody received, along with some recommendations to council, appended to the agenda as correspondence item CLC1 2022. This was written delegation only. Mr. Devereaux is not present to speak. Pursuant to the procedural bylaws, we received a delegation on the matter. Item 15.5 respecting the South Main Street Bridge Eco Park project update will be brought forward at this time. So PWCS 118-2022, the South Main Street Bridge Eco Park project update. Can I get a mover and a seconder? I got a mover, Councillor D'Angelo, and a seconder, Councillor Sentence. And is there any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, can I get some clarification from the Director of Operations?
Yep, go ahead.
Does RJ Burnside do the same, like, they're separate companies, obviously, but in McIntosh Perry, do they do the same service? Do they provide the same service to the city? Or do they do totally different things? Is one more for enhancements?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the city hired McIntosh Perry to do the original structural assessment of the bridge. We subsequently hired RJ Burnside to look at a concept plan for the pedestrian walkway and eco park, and then have since hired McIntosh Perry again to complete the environmental enhancement strategy. So we've used both firms. Each have expertise in each particular field. And council has adopted the concept plan that was developed by RJ Burnside, and that's the one that we're advancing for the purpose of the project.
Oh, okay. I thought we were adapting to the McIntosh Perry. I'm mistaken then, I'm sorry.
No, the recommendations in the last report, which is the McIntosh Perry report, looked at the environmental enhancements that have to be protected both now and during construction.
Okay, so we are going with the RJ Burnside.
Yes, that's the one the council has adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need some clarity here because, as you're aware, Mr. Holman, Mr. Devereaux sent a report, and his concern, and I'll see if you can respond to it, is that the R.J. Burnside concept, which was developed through public meetings for the scope of the work on the bridge, so the actual physical characteristics of the bridge, his concern is, through a conversation I've had, was that that's not being implemented. What is being implemented is the Macintosh Perry smaller bridge version. So can you explain what the differences are, or which way we're going with this?
Okay, through Mr. Mayor, Council adopted the recommendations of the R.J. Burnside report. The concept plan that was developed there shows a concept or a configuration of a bridge that's wider, has the ability for pedestrians to move either way. When we hired the Macintosh Perry firm to do the enhancement strategy, they showed in their report a picture of a pedestrian bridge with some little bump outs that would accommodate fishing areas, bird viewing areas, that type of thing. The purpose of their comment was to say that in the interest of protecting the environment, you may want to find alternate ways to accommodate things like habitat for barn swallows and things like that. The process that we're going to follow is going to ultimately try to achieve what's in the R.J. Burnside report. But there are going to be environmental constraints that might prevent the ultimate construction to look like the concept plan in the R.J. Burnside study. Because what has to take in, we have to take into consideration the geotechnical and engineering elements, the environmental elements, and the financial elements as well. What we have there now, and what the community has always supported, is just a replacement, kind of like for like. But in reality, because we won't ever put heavy equipment on that structure, there's really no need to design it to that standard. So in the interest of financial responsibility, and in the interest of how the environment's going to be protected during construction, we need to kind of blend those two ideas to come up with the ultimate configuration. The design process, if it's council's direction to do so, will include additional public engagement so that they can understand why the deck maybe has to be made of different material, or why we can't use the existing abutments, or why the bridge has to be lowered or raised. So there'll be an opportunity to be involved in that process, but we can't at this point determine exactly what the final configuration is going to look like until we factor in all the information.
That's a really great answer. I like that. I just wanted to make sure we weren't closing the door on anything. I think we have to have an open mind here, look at the different potential designs, and again, based on environmental impact, maybe it is better to do something different. But I just want to make sure we have the ability to have some public consultation and move forward with the best design. And again, it's all going to come down, well, I shouldn't say it's all going to come down to price, but price will have a big component here. I think council needs to remember that, and we need to get the best value for our dollar, and whatever that is, hopefully you working with Macintosh Perry, and if R.J. Burnside is still part of this, then hopefully we get the best plan for the community in Port Robinson.
That's the intention, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Longo. Anyone else want to speak to this? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other, because I was reading the delegation's report or submission, that was one of the concerns that he had, was the construction and the width of the bridge, which we have an answer to. The second one that he had in his through the delegation report here was he was asking for an update or of project timelines. I know there's a lot of information that we've gone through here to read all the reports, both the R.J. Burnside and then the Perry Macintosh. Sometimes I like simple stuff. Is there a way that you can put a timeline together of some of the components that have to be done, so we know where we are in this process, either point form or through a timeline diagram, something visual that could be helpful to determine where we are going on this path. Is that something that staff can put together relatively shortly, or get that out to council?
Jeff, go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's the intention here. Obviously, if we don't include funding in this year's budget, then the timeline is going to be shifted. So my preference would be if Phase 2 funding is approved in this year's, in the 2023 capital budget, and we'll be going out to get an RFP for the detailed design stage. Part of that deliverable will be to provide a timeline for the completion of the design, inclusion of public information centers, and prepare cost estimates, hopefully in time for budget of the following year, 2024.
Okay, so you're looking for funding through this budget process to put that timeline together, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly?
Yes, that's correct. If the funding isn't approved this year, then everything is going to have to shift. So I mean, I could put together a timeline with a bunch of assumptions, but I think that just creates some expectations in the community that maybe are unrealistic.
Well, we definitely don't want to do that, but we want realistic timelines, and if there's a cost associated with those timelines. If we have to wait till budget time, that's a few months away. I guess I can live with that, and we'll just have to move forward at that point in time with a more detailed timeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
I'll take Mr. Through you to Jeff. Jeff, for the 2023 budget, will part of that deliberation be, and I know when I read the report, the first item that needs to be done is temporary nesting boxes have to be replaced or installed, and also nesting areas for the turtles have to be preserved, and there's a time frame. If I read the report quickly, we would have to initiate the work this year. I believe it would be in April. If I look at the time frame, if we initiated the work, say April 15th, we'd have to be finished by the middle of May, or give or take a couple weeks, so that those boxes and the nesting areas could be implemented. Is it our intentions to do that? Because that's the first phase that needs to be done before we can even get into the building phase. What is the goal for the city to complete that or have that initiated? Because before, I don't know if Councillor or any of you read the report, but before we can even start any type of construction on that project, there has to be a nesting area in place through the breeding season, the hatching season. Can you answer that?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have enough funding available in our in the current project budget to build things like bat boxes and hen houses and the things that are recommended in the environmental enhancement strategy. And you're right, Councillor, that these should be put in place in the first quarter of 2023. Some of these things are relatively inexpensive. The materials might cost, maybe $50, or we could buy them. They might be good projects for special interest groups who might want to help. So I can't really say how, other than to say the cost of materials might be in the, $20,000 range if we had to buy them. But there may be opportunities to work with the community to have some of these things built and implemented as part of an educational process.
Okay, thanks. Something that we could discuss during the budget, and if need be, we still be within the time frame to move forward, I would say by that. Thank you.
But I do think that, am I correct, Jeff? You say that money, we have that money already accounted for.
Yeah, from last year, 20,000.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Just for clarity, could we get maybe the budget timeline? Again, I wasn't here on at the last council, because we talk about budget, doing it at budget time, but I just want to know what is that time frame? Maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, to our Director of Finance. If I'm just looking for a window, like is it January to February?
Through Mr. Mayor, we don't expect starting deliberations before February.
Okay.
I can tell you this from a regional perspective. The region traditionally has their budget done at the end of the year. That we're not starting budget deliberation at the region until January 5th. They're hoping to have the budget completed and passed at the council meeting at the end of February. So
I find that odd, Mr. Mayor, because I know the ABCs, the agency boards and commissions, have to get their budgets in. Being on the police board, we already passed our budget.
I know, but
sent
all
it to
those
the
things,
region.
I'm just telling you the timelines. We've already been given the timelines, and the timelines to put the whole budget together and pass at final council meeting will be the third week of February.
Okay.
A lot of that will be done prior to in different stages. We'll know different numbers, but to put the whole package together. That's the time.
Well, then, I just want to go back to Councillor Hanley's point then. If there's money put aside for some of the items that need to be done, I'm hoping that they don't just if the money's already allocated there, let's try to get that stuff done sooner than later. And sometimes you just can't wait. I know there's opportunities for educational purposes, but the timelines are critical on this project, so we have to make sure, again, because if we don't get those boxes in and the nesting areas for the turtles, then you lose a whole year, and that goes a long way. So I think those, to me, are the critical items right now, considering we have the money to do it, to get it done as quickly as possible if the weather allows. Hopefully we have a nice mild winter, and we can be out there in January doing this.
Thank you. Okay, is there any further comments on this? Seeing none, I had a mover and seconder, was D'Angela was the mover and Councillor Sentence was the seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Consent reports. We have, do any councillors want to pull any of the consent reports, 15.1 to 15.3 and 15.6 to 15.10? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank
Angela?
you, Mr. Mayor. Just item 15.1, the accounts payable listing. At this time, I know I should have probably done this earlier in the meeting, but I wanted to declare a conflict on some checks that are written. So at this point in time, is it appropriate for me to declare the conflict and the reason why for those checks that are being posted? I see the clerk nodding his head. So given that, I do want to make note, and I guess I'm going to ask the clerk, because this is the first time I'm doing this with these checks. Do you want the check number, the page, or just the item right now? And when I fill the registry later out, I can give further detail?
Just the item for right now. For the registry, we can include specific details.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our clerk. One item is JB Office Systems. There's a couple of checks written to them. I have a family member that works for them. If you need to know specifically, it is my brother. Also, I have the Royal Canadian Legion. There's a check written to them. I am a member of the Royal Canadian Legion, so I'd like to declare an indirect conflict there. And then under the Committee of Adjustments, there was a check issued to myself, and I'd like to declare a conflict on that. I don't want to vote on that, giving myself a check. That's not consistent with what council receives as remuneration. So those are the items that I have a conflict with.
Thank you. Okay. And you duly noted that. Okay.
And then I did have some questions regarding some of the items on the accounts payable listing. Is this an appropriate time to ask, or do you want me to talk to our Director of Finance later with those questions? I'm looking for your direction, Mr. Mayor.
Is this under that same 15.1?
Yeah, it's 15.1. Not ones that I have conflicts, but other ones, just some clarity and...
Well, you can, if we pass this, are you okay to have that conversation after, or do you want to have that conversation before?
Well, I have several questions, but some of them are more detailed, but there's a few that I just want general that might be beneficial to the rest of council if they hear my question.
Go ahead.
Okay. One was... on page 72 of the accounts payable list, there's a lot of checks written to the City of St. Catharines, and I think it's in the water bill section with St. David's. Maybe if I could just get a bit of an explanation on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are a number of homes along St. David's Road that are serviced by St. Catharines, and they bill us, and we in turn bill the users.
Okay, excellent. Good one. Then there was some under the building and bylaw. There was, it's not just junk, it's, excuse my tardiness here, but I just printed this off today, so I didn't. It was regarding, I believe it's for the Clean Yards bylaw, and I'm just looking for the name of. Urge the Purge, yes. I see quite a bit of those, and my assumption is those are for bylaw infractions, and we've sent someone out to clean up the property, and Urge the Purge then has billed them, and then I'm assuming if they don't pay their bill, it ends up on the tax bill. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Jason, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the process is if the city has to initiate a cleanup due to a bylaw infraction, the contractor, in this case Urge to Purge, performs the work. We pay that bill and then we bill it back to the resident.
Okay. On the bill back to the residents, do we put an administrative charge for our time and efforts for that, or do we just bill them back the direct cost from Urge to Purge?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't say 100%, but I believe it may just be the direct cost from the contractor that we put back on the resident.
Okay, so we may, I may bring up a notion, the motion at some point in time, looking at charging administrative fees, because there's costs associated with our staff doing that, and if people are being negligent and not following the bylaws, the rest of the city shouldn't be paying for those additional costs. So I think that's something we need to look at. And then the other one was just trying to get a bit of understanding here, being new on council. On page 80, it talks about the Canada Summer Games, and there was a bunch of expenses under there. It was my understanding that that project, the Canada Summer Games Park, is run by a consortium. Why? I guess my question is, why would there be additional charges to the city of Thorold?
Maria, I'll let Maria answer that.
Let me just, what page was it on, Councillor?
It's page 80. Department 722, Canada Summer Games. Like the one that concerns me the most is like there's an arena time charge of $18,316. Is the city paying for ice time that's not being used?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. There's two charges. There's the $18,000. That would be for September for ice time that was not sold. The second one is a subsidy. So any groups that are in the playing at the Canada Games Park that are eligible for a subsidy, the city would have to pay that.
Okay. In relation to the arena time that we spend, do we have a policy there, knowing that if we're paying for this ice time anyways, is there user groups out there that might be beneficial, like schools or anyone in Thorold, taxpayers, because we're paying that anyway, so if we can offer that ice time, it will be a short notice ice time. Is there some sort of policy that we have that could benefit our community for the $18,000 that we pay?
I'll let Jeff answer that.
Through Mr. Mayor, yeah, that is something that we need to work together with the operator on to help attract and optimize the use of, particularly the city of Thorold's use of that facility. At the moment, they're still combining their marketing and we're dealing with some staffing issues, but we're setting up a separate committee to deal with operational issues that will look exclusively at how the policy works, not only for those people that want to use it and aren't aware of it, but also those people that book it and don't pay for it and don't show up. So we are looking to protect the city's investment here the best we can.
Okay, yeah, so if you could, during your deliberations through you, Mr. Mayor, just discuss some way of if there's available ice time, even if it's last minute, if there's some groups in Thorold that can use it, we're paying for it anyways, let them use it, it's just sitting there. But yeah, I guess ideally you want to get all the ice time booked so that there's no check being written to the Canada Game Summer Park. Okay, that answers that one. I have a few other ones here, Mr. Mayor, but I don't want to take all of council's time up, so I could talk to the Director of Finance to get some clarity on that. But those are the ones I brought up that I think there's additional policies that we could put in place that could be beneficial to the council and to the city as a whole. So I'd like to do a bit more work on stuff like that as we see that going through the accounts payable list.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor. Huh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to also mention that I'm a member of the Legion, so if I'm in conflict of interest with that same check, you can make note of that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there any further comments regarding items 15.1.3 to 15.1 to 15.3 and 15.6 to 15.10? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I want to take a look at that Thorold Heritage Advisory Committee report. And I'd just like to amend the at-large members, which are listed as 5 in the report, but at present they are 9 at-large and 1 council member. So I'd like the number to be increased to reflect the true size of the heritage group.
What's that?
We can separate that.
We'll separate that and do that. Okay, anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
No, I'm okay, Mr. Mayor. I think it's
Okay.
elsewhere.
Okay, so we're going to do 15.1 separate, right? Because we had some conflicts on that.
Yep.
Okay. I need a mover and a seconder for all of them, and then we'll go through them as required. I got Councillor Longo, mover, seconder, Councillor Sentence. So the first one up is DF 30/2022. How do we want to do this? Because there's only certain parts that...
So just looking at the motion, it's only to be received for information. So it's up to, we can just lift it and just deal with it separately to receive it?
I have it separate. Okay? Yeah.
Sure. Yep, so we can do 15.1 first, and then the other one, and then deal with the rest of the block.
Okay. So 15.1, I got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, the rest of them now, 15.2, 15.3, 15.4, 15.6. We'll leave 15.7 out. So we got 15.8, 15.9, and 15.10. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so now we're gonna make that amendment on 15.7, committees of council, terms of reference for Heritage Advisory. And that was to leave it as was, so you want the numbers to reflect what?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. So at present on page 3, it states that at-large members are 5, but in reality we're 9 plus a councillor.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, does this amendment on the screen capture what you're looking for? That the draft terms of reference for the Heritage Committee be amended to increase the membership from 5 to 9 community members.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is everybody good with that? So again, I had a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Sentence, and we are now CC 7-2022, 15.7, the amended terms of reference on the Heritage Advisory Committee, and then the Tourism Advisory Committee as it stood. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Discussion reports. 16.1 FES 03 2022 relocation of capital funds for forcible entry training simulator. Can I get a mover and a seconder before I get the, I got a mover, Councillor Decker, seconder, Councillor Sentence, and I'll turn this over to our fire chief, Terry Dixon. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary. Through you, recommendations for staff is one that the unsolicited donation of $5,000 from the Thorold Business Improvement Area, the BIA, in accordance with policy 100-18, corporate and or private donations and fundraising activities be accepted. And 2, that the donor's request for the donation to be used for the benefit of the Thorold firefighters be approved. And 3, that the reallocation of $4,565.44 from capital expenditures, small tools, equipment account be approved. And 4, that the purchase of a forcible entry trainer simulator in the amount of $9,565.14 includes HST to be funded from the donation, and the reallocation be approved. That concludes the report.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 16.2 DS 8 2022 zoning bylaw amendment 2 South Street final. I need a mover and a seconder. Can I get a mover and a seconder? I got Councillor D'Angelo moves, Councillor Decker seconds. Okay, I'll turn this over to, who's going to bring this one forward? Jason Simpson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the recommendations of this report are 1, that report DS 8 2022 recommendation report zoning bylaw amendment 2 South Main Street dated December 20th, 2022 be received. 2, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 214097 to rezone the subject lands from a residential first density R1A zone to a site-specific residential first density C R1C-7 with a holding zone and a site-specific residential second density holding R2-15H with a holding zone be approved. And lastly, recommendation 3, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 60-2019 to rezone the subject lands from a single detached R1A zone to a site-specific single detached and duplex holding R1C-83 with a holding zone and a site-specific semi-detached R2B-84 with a holding zone be approved. And that concludes the recommendations.
Thank you, Jason. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Put your hands up, please, so the clerk can see. Opposed? That is defeated. Well, I don't see, is Councillor Hanley? What? Were you for?
I was in favor. I was in favor, Your Honor, Mr. Mayor.
So
I voted for.
You voted for. Put the hands up again for, please. And we had 4 opposed. 4 opposed, correct?
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask for a recorded vote? It'll make it easier.
Might be a lot easier on this one. Okay, we'll do a recorded vote. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor D'Angelo?
Opposed.
Councillor Decker? For. Councillor DeRose?
Opposed.
Councillor DeVitas?
For.
Councillor Hanley?
For.
Councillor Longo?
Opposed.
Councillor O'Hare?
Opposed.
Councillor Sentence?
For.
Mr. Mayor.
For.
Mr. Mayor, that passes 5-4.
Okay. So now we move on to PWCS 115-2022 Rose Avenue sanitary sewer. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Longo's the mover, a seconder. I got Councillor Sentence. Go ahead. And I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman, please.
Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is that council approve the budget overrun of $29,945 plus HST from the sanitary sewer reserve for the Rose Avenue emergency sanitary sewer repair.
Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. CC 64-2022, Environmental, Climate Change and Biodiversity Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. Can I get a mover and a seconder? I got a mover, Councillor Debaditis, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. And I'll turn this over to our clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that the terms of reference for the Environment, Climate Change and Biodiversity Advisory Committee be approved.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk, is there any idea when the meetings will be held, or will that be up to the committee members?
Through the mayor, that would be up to the committee as a whole. At first, we would do our best to schedule based on the general availability of who gets appointed onto the committee, and then we would set a committee schedule for the rest of the term from there.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CC 6-2022, appointments of council members to committees of council, boards of management, agencies, boards, and commissions. Can I get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll start down the list. Councillor DeRose and a seconder, Councillor O'Hare. Okay, and I'll turn this over to our clerk.
Mr. Mayor, if you actually want to go ahead and call a question on just receiving the item, we can receive it, and then we'll start going through the committees.
Okay.
Just to receive the memo itself, so that's
And then we'll
done.
go through it here?
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now, again, I'll turn it over to our clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we have done is we did reach out to members of council to ask preferences for individuals who wish to sit on the committees. I'm just showing up an example right now of who has already put their names forward. The process going forward is what we will do is we will look at each committee just in the order that they're on here, and we will seek any additional nominations. If anybody would like to sit on one of those committees, you just need to put your name forward. We can add you. As you can see, it's a minimum of one, so we can go more than what we have, but we do need a minimum of whatever that minimum is for each committee. I'll just ask Mr. Mayor if there are any questions with that procedure before we move forward.
No problem with that procedure.
So what we'll do is we'll start with the actual committees of council. Following that, the boards of management, again, committees of council, and then we have the Thorold BIA and membership on the Thorold Library. So starting with the age-friendly committee, does require a minimum of one. I'll just ask if there are any nominations for membership from council on the age-friendly committee.
I can tell you that that committee does meet during the day.
Councillor O'Hara? Call a second and third time for any further nominations. Seeing none, each of these will just require a motion of council at the end to just approve all the ones as is.
That's
okay?
Good. Yeah. That's the best way to do it.
Next, we have the Community Events Advisory Committee, looking for one. We currently have Councillor Decker. Are there any further nominations to Community Events Committee? Seeing none, I'll just ask one more time. Okay, we have the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, looking for a minimum of one. We currently have Councillor O'Hare. Are there any other nominations for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee?
Matthew.
Apologies, that's minimum of two. So we are looking for one more. Councillor Hanley?
Councillor Hanley here.
Yep.
You want your name forward on that, Councillor Hanley?
Yes, can I, with one question first?
Yeah.
Would we know if that's a daytime or a nighttime meeting?
That would be decided once the group meets, Councillor Hanley.
Look, I'd like to put on it because in all honesty, I just done a seminar in Toronto recently in regards to equality, equity, and inclusion in the workplace.
Yep.
And I'd like to sit on this committee.
Thank you so much. Your name has been added.
Any other nominations to the committee? Seeing none, we'll look at the Environment, Climate Change, and Biodiversity Advisory Committee. We have a minimum one. We currently have Councillor O'Hare. Are there any other nominations for this committee? I see Councillor Longo. Is there any further Councillor?
No, no, please don't put me on the list. Now, my question was, or comment was going to be, I know myself, I have a schedule that I had to adhere to, and I have some daytime commitments. I won't be able to commit to too many of these committees right now, but once they're established and I know when they're meeting, that it helps me out making that decision, just going forward. So my question is, can I add myself later to a committee once I find out some of these meeting times? Because I hate to be on one and then all of a sudden it meets Monday morning at 9 o'clock and I can't make that one because of a work commitment. So I don't want to then dissuade someone from getting on the committee. So there's only one on there that I think I'm going to sit right now because I want to really commit to that one. But the other ones, I may have to wait till they are determined of when they meet.
Yep, we can look at that then. We can make an amendment.
And through the mayor, I'll advise, of course, any member of council can attend these committees, even if you are not a formal member of the committee. The chair of each committee is more than likely to extend speaking rights to you as a councillor attending these committees as well. You just wouldn't necessarily have a vote until we formally bring a motion to council to add you to the committee to have that voting right.
Councillor Longo, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to add to what Councillor D'Angelo said there. I put my name forward here, seeing Councillor O'Hare's already. I hope he doesn't remove his name because, as I asked, I'm not sure when this committee meets, and I may not be able to fulfill it, but I'd like to put my name forward in the,
absolutely,
if I can.
Yeah.
Okay, the Heritage Advisory Committee. Currently have one. Councillor O'Hare, are there any additional nominations? Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee, we're looking for two. We currently have one. Councillor Sentence, are there any additional nominations?
I think they meet during the day, don't they?
Traditionally, they have, I believe.
I believe they have, yes. I think they've met in afternoons, but
So with this, if there are no further nominations, this will come with a motion just to amend those terms of reference to be a minimum of one again. However, again, should councillors wish to change that at any time, you can amend those terms of reference to increase it and add additional members. Road Safety Committee, again, minimum one. I see Councillor DeRose. Are there any additional nominations? Councillor D'Angelo?
That is correct, if you can add me to that.
Councillor DeRose?
Through you, Mr. Just told Councillor D'Angelo, usually we meet around 4, so you know, through your schedule.
So we need to change.
Great addition.
You're going to change that to 2.
That's correct.
Well, it says 1 minimum, so that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Tourism Advisory Committee, minimum 1. We currently have none. Are there any nominations to the committee? Okay, we see the Town and Gown Committee, minimum 2. We currently have 2. Are there any additional nominations? Allenburg Community Center Board of Management, looking for a minimum 1. I see Councillor Handley. Is that to put your name forward, Councillor?
Yes, sir.
Are there any additional nominations to the committee? Seeing none, I see the Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center Board of Management. I see Councillor Handley. Are there any additional nominations? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, perhaps we go through with a motion to approve these as these represent council, and then we'll do a second one for
One that needs to be added on the board is the Thorold Municipal Nonprofit Housing as well.
And they're not a committee of council though, so they would be a separate.
No, they'd be on
But
the
we can add
board.
that to the other
Yeah,
list, that's right.
yeah.
Yep, we can do that. So if you can seek a motion to.
Okay, can I have a motion, mover and a seconder to accept the nominations for the committees of council? I have a mover, Councillor Decker, and a seconder, Councillor D'Angela. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
So we have the Thorold BIA, according to their terms of
One
reference.
sec, according to your list, age-friendly, Councillor O'Hare's put his name forward on that, correct?
Yeah. Sorry,
So,
that's
yeah,
correct.
so.
I have it in my notes, but not on the screen.
Yeah, no, it just, so basically, we're still going to be looking for somebody for the Tourism Advisory Committee, so if anybody can have a look, and if you decide that you're interested to bring it forward at the next meeting, would be appreciated, okay? That's for committees of council. Now we're gonna move to the boards.
Correct. So the Thorold Business Improvement Area, their terms of reference seek 2 members. They're currently asking for those 2 positions. I currently have Councillor DeVitas and Councillor Sentence. Are there any other interested parties, interested members for this position or nominations? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, can we take a motion for the BIA?
The BIA, can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Decker, seconder, Councillor DeRose. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now we'll go on to
For
the library.
Thorold Public Library, currently they are seeking 1, but through the presentation tonight advised they would be able to accept more. It would just require a change to their terms of reference. I see Councillor Sentence putting your name forward.
Anyone else for the library board?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, can we have a motion for the library
Can
board?
I get a mover and a seconder for the library? Councillor D'Angela's a mover, Councillor Decker's a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
And finally, the Thorold Municipal Nonprofit Housing
Nonprofit
Corporation.
Housing Corporation.
I believe they are requesting 2 members.
2 members, that's correct. So we have anybody putting their name forward for that at this time? Councillor Sentence. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder for that nomination, please? I got a mover, Councillor Longo, seconder, Councillor DeRose. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so
Thank you,
where
Mr.
we're,
Mayor.
yeah, go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if we need to, but should we make note there of the Transit Board Commission on there or not?
I don't know, should we do that?
We did the transit board at the previous meeting.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
but because it's a regional.
Because it's a regional, so
Okay.
Generally speaking, organizations external to the city that do have a member of council or a member from the city on their boards will write to the city through the clerk's office asking us for those nominations. We received that from the region prior to the previous meeting, which is why it was done at the previous meeting.
But what we can do in the, on the website, you know, where we put what committees of council they're on, that's a good place to put that he sits on that, so that the residents will know.
Exactly, and that's the reason I want.
Yeah.
I don't want it to look like I'm only sitting on one.
No,
board.
that's,
And
that,
to,
we'll make sure that gets put on.
Yeah, to that point, Mr. Mayor, this will all be updated on the current council page, so the membership for all of your committees will be included under your names on that page.
So going into the next council meeting, when we come back in January, because we'll be looking at candidates, if you decide you're interested in any other committee, or if we know we need a candidate for tourism, and we need another one for municipal nonprofit housing, or any other committee, by all means, bring that forward at the next meeting. Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since you brought up the Thorold nonprofit housing, on the city website for the committees for looking for public members at large, because it's my understanding last term and previous terms that council appoints the public members at large.
That's correct, and that needs to be.
They're not listed as a committee on the website.
That is
through the mayor, that is being looked at this week. We never received formal correspondence from them with regards to that, but we are aware of the past practice of us actually doing those nominations. So it's being updated, as well as there will be additional communication in January to the to everyone in the community that's available and open, and it will be included in the newspaper as well.
Okay, no, that's excellent. The other thing I just want to mention on the website, when you click on Living Here and you want to apply for a position, it says please be advised applications are currently not being accepted. So you may want to look at that on the website, because on the website it shows under the home page with a tab that you can go and apply. But if you go to Living Here, it tells that we're not looking for anybody. So you may want to just change that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, I maybe we could, this is a good time to ask the million-dollar question. Do we vote or do we not vote on committees? Last term we were told we don't vote. I have people on the committees I'm on saying, no, that's changed, you're voting. Can we just have some clarity on voting or not?
Through the mayor, you do have a vote as a member of each committee based on the terms of reference that council has approved. So you are members with a vote on each committee. To that point, when we're considering adding members, our recommendation is always that we not have a quorum of council on any of these committees for that reason, as you then have a quorum of council making decisions at the committee level. So our recommendation is that although you have a minimum of 4, we wouldn't necessarily want that to go, or a minimum of 1 or 2, we wouldn't want that to go beyond 4 for that reason. Okay. But yes, you do have a vote on those committees.
Thank you.
Councillor Longo, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk. I'm just wondering, can a member of a councillor's family sit on a committee? And if you don't have the answer, you can give that to us later.
I can provide some additional information. To my knowledge, there's nothing that would prevent it other than the code of conduct that certainly applies, as well as any conflict of interest provisions that may apply to any member of a committee or to the councillor themselves.
Yep. Go ahead, Councillor.
So that would directly, through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Trenum, that would definitely affect me because as a council representative for Heritage, my wife also is on the Heritage Committee. So I really need clarification on that, for sure.
I'll look into it and provide some more direct information, but again, to my knowledge, there's nothing that prevents it at present.
But when you do that, can you send it out?
We'll circulate to all
Great.
members.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's good. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we've passed on the motions. We're good there. Okay, now we're moving on to notice of motion. I've got Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please get a report back first of the year and just a summary of all financials in regard to the Walker Brothers Complex first year of operation? I'd like a detailed report including where the money's coming from to cover these costs. Thank you.
You bringing that to the next council meeting? Yeah, okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a reconsideration motion that I want to bring forward this evening, and I wanted to ask leave of council that we could deal with it this evening.
So you want to, first we would have to waive the procedural bylaw. I'll leave it with the clerk first.
Can I explain so that you know what you're waiving the procedural bylaw for, so that it makes your decision a little easier? What I wanted to reconsider was last meeting, the interim operating plan update for the Cemetery Administration Office was referred to the budget meeting. Having said that, the budget meeting is going to be potentially maybe the end of February before we're completed. So we're going to lose a bit of time moving forward trying to fix the Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building. So I wanted to bring item 4, the funding of the engineering design of the Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building of $50,000 reallocated from the unspent portion of the mausoleum design finalization and tender project approved in the 2022 capital budget. So I wanted to just only bring that portion forward. I want to give staff time so that when we do go into budget, we have some numbers of what it's going to cost us to fix the building and what design. there's no use pushing it to the budget meeting and then trying to decide at that point in time, because we're going to be no further ahead. So that's the component I wanted to bring forward, and I'm hoping council will reconsider that portion of it to give staff some time. I did talk to Mr. Holman. He appreciated the extra time if this is something council wants to move forward. But through Mr. Mayor, you could have him speak on the issue too if you'd like, but that's the reconsideration I'd like to bring forward. Just item number 4.
And so we're just gonna reconsider that one part of the motion, and the rest can go to budget, but I agree with where you're heading. But first now, we're gonna have to waive the procedural bylaw and then do the reconsideration, am I correct? So we'll have, because we wanna do it now, because it's time sensitive.
So just through the mayor, so any proposal to reconsider or amend a decision of council, of course, does require a motion to reconsider. So what would go on the floor, as moved by Councillor D'Angela, is just a motion to reconsider clause, or we would be reconsidering the referral motion of clause 4. So that's where, that would be what we were looking to do. That motion to reconsider, it may only be introduced by a councillor who is present at the meeting. It would be introduced as a notice of motion and then requires an affirmative 2/3 vote. So that's, you're looking to deal with this tonight as well, though?
Yeah, so we got 2 votes. We gotta do the first, procedural
So first you would have to,
bylaw.
correct, waive the procedural bylaw in order to introduce the motion tonight.
Then we do that.
And then you could need a 2/3 majority to actually reconsider the item. That would then put that item back on the floor.
Okay, so we have a mover, Councillor D'Angela, seconder, Councillor Sentence, to waive the procedural bylaw. That's all we're doing right now. We need 2/3 vote. Am I correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so now we're
looking for a motion to reconsider the referral of clause 4.
Clause 4, let's make sure everybody sees it and everybody's clear, and then we'll proceed on that. Then I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, I just, the point of clarification, though, I know I supported the deferral, so I can move the motion, but just for clarity, can someone who did not support the deferral, can they second the motion, or does it have to be someone who supported the deferral? Just for clarity, thank you.
My guess would be it'd have to be somebody that supported it both ways. Would I be correct on that?
Yeah, the procedural bylaw was silent on it when I read. I wasn't able to determine.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the procedural bylaw only says that it may be introduced by a councillor who was present at the meeting and voted in the majority. It's silent on a seconder.
So then you're saying it could be anyone?
That's correct.
Okay, okay. So, we have a mover, Councillor D'Angela, for the reconsideration of clause number.
So, Mr. Mayor, the motion would be to reconsider the referral of clause 4, which is that funding for the engineering design of the Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building of $50,000 be reallocated from the unspent portion of the mausoleum design finalization and tender project approved in the 2022 capital budget.
So I got a mover, Councillor D'Angela, a seconder, Councillor Sentence. Okay, is there any discussion on that?
Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me, sorry, Mr. Mayor. This is still just the reconsideration motion, so you're looking for only discussion on whether or not to reconsider.
My mistake, okay. So again, we need 2/3, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, now we're gonna do the actual clause, correct?
Correct. So now you can reconsider clause 4. You just need to put clause 4 back on the floor.
I'm making a motion to put clause 4 back on the floor.
Okay, and I got a seconder, Councillor Sentence.
And I'm going to keep my comments very brief. I just want to give staff ample time to bring us some wholesome information at budget meetings so we can make a more educated decision and we can move this project along, because we all recognize we have to do something at the cemetery to accommodate individuals visiting and the staff that are working there. So we can't do that until we have a building that's operational. So I'd like to get moving on that component of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley, you wish to speak on that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, okay, I agree with Henry after, I haven't had a chance to talk to him. I was gonna get a hold of him, I was extremely busy. And I do support what his intention is here, after the discussion prior to the last meeting. So I'm in support of what he wishes to do here today.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to speak to it? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I think it's a very prudent choice to do this. Okay. We're on to, what? Bylaws? Okay. Bylaws, I have a mover, Councillor Dividitis, and a seconder, Councillor Longo. That we move, how many we got here?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's just that the bills, Bill 104, 2022 through Bill...
Oh, they're all in order, okay, yeah.
Through Bill 123, 2022 be now read and do pass.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That's it, adjournment. Okay. I now move that this meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:50 p.m. All those, we don't have to vote on that. Anyways, thank you, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Great meeting, good discussion, and everybody have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a happy, healthy New Year. And please enjoy some time with family and friends. And we'll see you all back in January.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody too, and see you in 2023.